Tonight, we step into the pale grit and lamp-warm air of a 1910s ROUEN slate pencil turner, with the river mist still clinging to your coat. Settle in and let the work move slowly. The bench is waiting beneath a low window, dusted with grey powder as fine as flour, and the small turning wheel rests where yesterday's hands left it. You can smell damp wool, machine oil, and the faint mineral scent of split slate. Rouen is still quiet at this hour. A cart passes somewhere beyond the yard, its iron rim ticking over stones, while inside the shop the first belt begins to move with a soft, patient slap. The 1910s ROUEN slate pencil turner does not hurry, because haste only breaks the pencil before it has become useful. Your first task is to stand beside the bench and let your eyes adjust. The room is not bright. It is made of grey light, wooden beams, narrow shelves, and trays of unfinished rods. Some rods are square and rough. Some have already been rounded. Some are no thicker than a match, and each one asks for the same careful pressure from your fingers. The slate itself has come a long way before it reaches you. It has been quarried, split, sawn, sorted, and carried through hands that know its temper. By the time it lies on your bench in Rouen, it looks modest, almost plain, but you learn quickly that plain things can be stubborn. A good pencil must be straight enough to roll, soft enough to write, and strong enough not to snap in a child's satchel. You take one blank between your thumb and forefinger. It feels cool, even in the warmed room. The edges are faintly sharp, and the dust clings to the creases of your skin. When you press it toward the turning stone, the little rod hums against the surface, and a thin grey breath rises into the morning air. This is why the work is hard. Though it looks gentle from far away, nothing here is heavy in the way of ship chains or millstones, but everything is small, repeated, and exacting. Your shoulders hold still for hours. Your fingers pinch and turn. Your eyes watch the narrow shadow along the pencil, judging whether the roundness is true enough. We stay with that first motion for a while, because it teaches the whole day. The wheel does not care that you are tired. The slate does not forgive a sudden twist. The finished pencil appears only after many tiny refusals, many adjustments, many moments when you ease back and begin again with less force than before. The sound is not loud, but it fills the room. There is the scrape of slate on stone, the low whir of the belt, the creak of a stool, and the dry tap of finished pencils laid in a wooden tray. Now and then someone coughs into a sleeve. Dust hangs in the light, soft as smoke, and you breathe carefully without thinking much about it. A ROUEN slate pencil turner in the 1910s knows the morning by touch more than by clock. The first hour belongs to stiffness. Your fingers are still waking. The second hour brings rhythm. The blank comes from the left, meets the stone, turns under your hand, and moves to the right if it survives. You begin to feel the hidden grain of the slate before you see it. Not every piece is worth saving. Some rods split lengthwise with a dry little click. Some crumble at the end. Some carry a seam that shows itself only when the wheel has already taken off the corners. You set those aside without drama, because waste is part of the day, and the tray of failures grows quietly beside the tray of finished work. The shop smells warmer as the morning deepens. Oil loosens in the bearings. Damp coats steam faintly from pegs near the door. Someone opens a lunch tin for a moment and closes it again, and the smell of bread and onion passes through the mineral air. You notice it, because small comforts become bright in such a grey place. The pencils are meant for schoolrooms, counting houses, and kitchen tables. Children will write sums with them on small frame slates. Shopkeepers may mark figures that can be wiped clean. A clerk might use one for rough notes before ink makes the account permanent. Yet here, before all that ordinary usefulness, each pencil is only a narrow piece of stone asking to be made obedient. You turn another blank. Its length is uneven, so your left hand steadies the far end while your right hand guides the pressure. The wheel takes the corners first, then the rod grows softer under your fingers. It becomes less like a splinter and more like a tool. You do not see the change all at once, but you feel the drag become smoother. There is a patience in this that does not announce itself. It settles into your wrists. It enters the way you breathe. The work teaches you to notice the difference between pressure and force, between speed and rhythm, between a pencil that is ready and one that only appears ready in poor light. In Rouen, in the 1910s, such knowing is part of earning the day. By mid-morning, the room has found its common pace, and we move with it from the first careful turning into the longer labor of keeping each pencil alike. The foreman does not need to speak often. He can hear when a wheel is being used badly. Too much pressure makes a harder rasp. A pencil held crooked chatters against the stone. You learn to hear your own mistakes before anyone crosses the floor. That quiet correction is kinder than words, and also more exact. At your bench, the measure is simple. A finished slate pencil should fit neatly in the tray with the others. It should not wobble when rolled. It should not be too thick for a child's fingers, or too thin to survive the journey from factory to shop. The standards are small, but they return again and again, like church bells heard through mist. You keep a gauge near the work, worn smooth from use. It may be a metal plate, a wooden notch, or simply the practiced span of thumb and finger. You pass the pencil against it, feeling for thickness. If it is still too square, it goes back to the stone. If it is too thin, nothing can add the slate again. That is one of the quiet strains of the Rouen slate pencil turner's work. Every motion removes something. Each second at the wheel makes the pencil smaller. There is no putting back a corner, no repairing a rod made weak by impatience, no hiding a bend once the pencil rolls in the tray and shows its fault with a small, honest turn. Your apron grows pale by degrees. At first it is dark cloth with a few grey fingerprints. Then the dust spreads across the lap and stomach, into the folds, over the cuffs. By noon you carry the colour of the material you work. Your hands look older than they are because the powder settles in every line. The cold of the slate is still there, even when the room warms. Each blank touches the skin like a small memory of the quarry. You can imagine the damp hillside where larger sheets were split from rock, the ringing strike of tools, the flakes stacked and hauled away. But you do not linger long because the next rod waits beneath your fingers. We can stay close to the bench and see how much of the day is held in inches. A pencil may be only a little longer than your hand, yet it contains decisions from quarrymen, cutters, packers, merchants, teachers, and children who will never know your name. The object is modest, and that is partly why it asks for such care. Sometimes the wheel wears unevenly. You feel it through the pencil before you understand it with your eyes. The rod begins to flutter. The sound changes. You lift away, wipe your thumb against the apron, and adjust the angle. A good worker learns not to argue with the machine, because the machine speaks in vibration, heat, and dust. The belt overhead moves with its own slow confidence. It may be powered from a line shaft, carrying motion from a larger engine or motor to many small benches. You hear the whole room working through that shared pulse. One person's task is separate, yet everyone depends on the same turning rhythm, the same maintenance, the same patience with warm parts. In the 1910s, Rouen is no stranger to industry. The city has mills, workshops, docks, warehouses, and trades that wake before the streets are fully bright. Yet the slate pencil turner works in a quieter corner of that world. The goods are small, the pay is modest, the skill is easy to overlook until you try to do it yourself. You try again with a rod that feels promising. It is straight, pale at the edge, and smooth enough not to fight you. The wheel touches it, and a fine line of dust lifts. You rotate the pencil slowly, not with a grand gesture, but with a near-invisible rolling of the fingertips. This is work learned in the joints. After many hours, your fingertips lose their clean sense of surface. Everything feels faintly powdered. The wood of the bench, the tray edge, the pencil blanks. Even the coin in your pocket seem to belong to the same grey world. You may rub your hands together, but the dust does not truly leave until washing, and even then some of it remains around the nails. There is hardship in that quiet sameness. The body is not made to hold one small tension forever. Your neck leans forward, your eyes narrow, your back stiffens against the stool, and still the work itself looks almost peaceful, as though anyone could sit down and make a pencil round, if only they had a little time. But time is exactly the weight of it. Not one pencil, but hundreds. Not one morning, but weeks and seasons. The same small pressure, the same grey dust, the same careful turning while the city outside changes weather, markets, and mood. The Rouen slate pencil turner earns skill by giving the body to repetition until repetition becomes knowledge. As noon approaches, the light changes on the bench, and we follow the work from the turning stone to the slower business of sorting what the morning has made. The finished pencils lie together with a soft clatter when you shift the tray. They look alike at first glance, then your eyes begin to separate them. One is slightly crooked, one is too rough near the end, one has a dark seam that may break under a child's hand. The sorting is quieter than turning, but it asks for another kind of attention. You run a pencil between your fingers. It should feel even, almost plain, with no tooth that catches the skin. You roll it on the board and watch the shadow below it. A straight pencil rolls gently and returns no complaint. A bent one lifts and drops, lifting and dropping again, and the fault is visible in that small uneven journey. The air near the sorting table is cooler. There is less movement from the wheel, and the dust has settled in a thin coat on the wood. You can hear paper wrappers being folded somewhere nearby. You can hear a knife trimming string. From the street comes the muffled cry of a vendor, softened by walls and distance until it becomes part of the afternoon. A 1910s ROUEN slate pencil turner may not do only one motion every day. In a small workshop, hands move where hands are needed. You may turn in the morning, sort before dinner, smooth the ends after, or help bundle pencils for delivery. The title of the job is narrow, but the day has several small doors. There is a tenderness in sorting, though no one would call it that at the time. You are protecting the user from frustration. A bad pencil scratches too harshly. A weak pencil breaks. A crooked pencil feels wrong before the lesson has begun. You remove those little troubles before they travel out into the world. Your dinner is simple. Bread wrapped in cloth, perhaps cheese, a bit of sausage, or soup carried in a tin if you are lucky. You eat with hands scrubbed as well as they can be scrubbed. Though slate dust still marks the cracks of the knuckles, the food tastes stronger because the morning has been dry. The room rests only partly. Machines slow. Voices rise a little, then lower again. Someone speaks of weather over the Seine. Someone mentions the price of coal, or a cousin in another factory, or a child learning letters on a school slate, much like the ones these pencils will serve. Work and home touch each other in ordinary sentences. You sit near the window if there is room. Outside, Rouen carries its own mixture of old stone and working smoke. Roofs lean close. Chimneys write thin lines into the air. The cathedral may be somewhere beyond the streets, but from here, you know the city mostly by bells, footsteps, damp air, and the changing light on factory glass. When you return to the tray, your hands are slightly warmer. The pencils are still cool. You pick them up one by one and continue the small judgment. Good. Too thin, rough end. Good. Slight split. Good. The rhythm is not a list in the mind so much as a soft pulse through the fingers. Each rejected piece has already cost labor. That is another difficulty. You do not throw away slate casually, but you cannot let poor work pass simply because someone has handled it. The shop depends on usefulness. A pencil that breaks too soon makes a schoolmaster complain, a merchant hesitate, and a customer choose another bundle next time. So you learn the discipline of letting go. The broken pieces make a faint, dry sound in their own box. They are not dramatic. They are part of the craft. Every trade has such a box, whether it holds cracked slate, spoiled thread, bent nails, or paper printed badly enough that no one can pretend. In the afternoon, the light grows flatter, and the details become harder to see. You may move the tray closer to the window. You may turn a pencil beneath the lamp and watch how the surface catches a faint shine. A smooth slate pencil is not glossy, but it has a quiet finish, like river stone handled for a long time. We linger here because the hardness of the job is not only in dust or wages, it is in care that cannot be hurried, care given to things that will be used briefly and wiped across small black slates until they are gone. You make an object designed to disappear by degrees, and still you make it as well as you can. When the meal hour has passed and the room gathers itself again, we move back toward the wheel, where the afternoon asks tired hands to remember the morning's precision. The wheel is waiting with its same patient voice, and you return to it with hands that are a little slower than they were before. The afternoon in a Rouen slate pencil workshop has a different weight from the morning, because the body has already spent its easiest strength. You sit, settle your feet, and feel the stool remember the shape of you. The slate blank rests between your fingers, cool and narrow, while the turning stone breathes out its grey dust. By now, you know the first touch matters most. If you meet the wheel too sharply, the pencil catches and chips. If you hold back too much, the corners remain, and the rod returns to the tray unfinished, so you find the middle place again. The gentle pressure that seems to come not from the hand alone, but from the elbow, the shoulder, and the quiet steadiness of your whole seated body. The 1910s ROUEN slate pencil turner works inside a world of small tolerances. A factory inspector might measure machines and wages, while a merchant might count bundles and prices, but you count by feel. The difference between good and poor work may be no wider than a fingernail. It may be a faint ridge felt under the thumb, or a softness at one end that tells you the slate will fail too soon. The afternoon light makes everything slightly uncertain. Dust dulls the window. Smoke from the city presses its color against the glass. The gray pencils and the gray bench begin to blend together, and your eyes must search harder for edges. You lift one rod closer to the light. Turn it slowly, and let the pale side tell you whether the surface is even enough. There is a smell that belongs only to such rooms. It is not simply stone, and not simply oil. It is old wood, damp clothing, warm metal, breath, and the dry powder of slate, all stirred together by the movement of belts and hands. When you have worked long enough in it, the smell follows you home in your hair and cuffs. Even after the evening wash has clouded the basin, a pencil breaks under your fingers with a soft snap. You pause, not in surprise, but in recognition. Some pieces are weak from the beginning, and the wheel merely reveals what was hidden in them. You set the two halves aside and take another blank. The work has taught you not to scold the material, because slate has its own memory of pressure, splitting, weather, and stone. We can imagine the slate before it came to Rouen, lying in beds that were once mud and fine mineral layers, pressed and hardened over ages beyond any worker's clock. In the workshop, though, that vast old time becomes something you can hold between finger and thumb. It is a strange tenderness, if you let yourself notice it. Your afternoon is spent shaping a piece of earth into a tool for handwriting. The pencil's end needs attention as much as its body. A rough end catches on cloth, splinters in wrapping, or feels unpleasant when held. You turn the rod and ease the end against the stone with a smaller motion. The sound changes from rasp to whisper. Dust gathers at the edge of your nail, and you roll the pencil once more to check its straightness. Across the room, another worker shifts in his chair, and the old boards answer beneath him. Someone taps a tray against the table to settle the pencils into order. The sound is light but distinct, a dry wooden knock followed by the faint settling of many narrow sticks. You hear it without looking, because your own hands are busy with the same small logic. It was hard to be a 1910s ROUEN slate pencil turner, partly because the work asked for accuracy without giving grandeur in return. There was no shining machine at the end, no polished cabinet, no object that would sit in a parlor and be admired. There were pencils, bundled by the dozen, destined to wear away in classrooms and kitchens. Yet the hands still had to care. Care becomes a habit long before it becomes pride. You do not speak of it very much. You simply choose the better blank, correct the angle, turn the rod, judge the surface, and place it down. Then you do it again, in the quiet mind of the worker. That repeating sequence can become almost like breathing, steady enough to carry you through the longest hours. The afternoon deepens, and the shop grows warmer near the machines, though the corners stay cool. Your throat feels dry from the dust. A cup of water tastes of metal if it has stood too long in the pail, but it helps all the same. You swallow, wipe your mouth with the back of your wrist, and return to the narrow rod waiting on the bench. There may be young workers nearby learning the trade by imitation. They watch the angle of the hands before they understand the reason. They break more rods than they finish at first. You can hear their mistakes in the wheel's chatter, and perhaps you remember your own first days, when the slate seemed to leap and twist as if it wanted to escape the fingers. No one learns this work from instruction alone. A foreman can tell you to be gentle, but the word gentle is too broad to guide the hand. You learn through broken pencils, sore fingers, and the gradual recognition of a good sound. You learn that the wheel should shave, not bite. You learn that the rod must turn continuously, or one flat side will remain. The Rouen workshop is part of a wider trade in school supplies, a world of slate boards, chalk, ink, nibs, rulers, copybooks, and rough paper. In the early 1900s, many children still use slates because they can be wiped clean and used again. A slate pencil leaves a pale line, not as soft as chalk and not as permanent as ink, and that temporary line suits lessons, sums, and practice letters. You might picture a classroom while you work, though not too brightly. Rows of children sit with framed slates on their laps or desks. A teacher writes an exercise. Small hands grip the pencils you have turned, perhaps too tightly, perhaps with the whole fist around the narrow shaft. The sound of many slate pencils on many boards is a dry, busy whisper, like rain made of stone. That thought may come and go while you work. It is not sentimentality, only connection. The object under your fingers will become part of another routine far from the bench. A child will write, wipe, write again. A shopkeeper will add figures and erase them. Someone will misplace the pencil, break it, borrow it, sharpen its end on a sill, and use it down to almost nothing. Your own routine remains here, with the dust and the belt. You lift a handful of blanks from the left tray, feeling for pieces that are too bent before they ever meet the wheel. Some are rejected immediately. Some are kept for shorter pencils if the workshop allows such grades. Nothing is wasted gladly, because material and time both have their price. There are grades of quality in many small goods, and slate pencils are no exception. Some bundles may be smoother, straighter, and wrapped more carefully for better shops. Others may be cheaper, meant for rough school use where breakage is expected. You can feel the difference at the bench, though the child who uses them may never think of the turning, sorting, and packing behind each piece. The hard part is not only making one good pencil, but making many that resemble one another. Human hands vary, slate varies, the wheel wears, the light changes, your body tires. Yet the bundle should look calm, and even when it reaches the merchant, as if the pencils grew that way naturally, slim and pale and ready to write. We stay in the afternoon because it shows the trade honestly. Morning has a certain freshness, and evening has the promise of release. But afternoon is where endurance lives. The chair presses against the back of your legs. Your thumb is tender at the pad. Your eyes water now and then, and you blink the dust away without stopping the rhythm. The turning stone itself carries marks from long use. Its surface is no longer exactly the surface it had when it was new. It has grooves, worn places, and small changes in bite that the hand must account for. You do not think of these details as problems, exactly. They are part of the instrument, like the familiar unevenness of a step in a stairway you climb every day. When the stone needs dressing or changing, work pauses in a different way. A tool is brought, the wheel is adjusted, and the air holds a brief expectancy. Maintenance is its own quiet craft. A machine that runs smoothly is not a miracle, only the result of oiling, tightening, cleaning, and paying attention before failure announces itself too loudly. For a Rouen slate pencil turner, in the 1910s, industrial time and hand time sit side by side. The belt and shaft give a steady motion, but the pencil still depends on the living hand. The machine turns faster than a person could, yet the person decides how the slate meets it. That partnership is modest and demanding, and it leaves the body tired in very specific places. You might stretch your fingers beneath the bench where no one sees. The knuckles open slowly. The thumb complains. Fine dust has dried the skin, making small cracks more likely in winter. A bit of cloth wrapped around one finger may protect a sore place, though it changes the feel of the work and makes the pencil harder to judge. Winter in such a shop carries its own discipline. The morning slate is colder. Coats stay on longer. Breath may cloud near the door until the room warms. The stove, if there is one, gives comfort only to those near it, while others work in layers and keep warmth by motion. The pencils still must be straight, no matter how stiff the fingers. Summer is not easier, only different. Dust sticks to damp skin. The air turns close. Open windows bring in street noise, flies, and warm smells from the river or nearby yards. Sweat darkens the collar, and the fine slate powder makes a paste at the wrist. You drink more water, wipe your face more often, and keep turning. The work does not need drama to be difficult. It wears by accumulation. One blank, one turn, one breath of dust, one slight bend in the neck, 1 hour after another. That is the truth of many quiet jobs. They do not strike the body like a single blow. They settle into it, patiently, until the day's labor can be felt even in the way you lift a cup at supper. And still, within the hardship, there is competence. You know things. You know the sound of a rod about to split. You know which batch came from better slate. You know when a worker across the room has set the pressure too heavy. You know how to finish a pencil so it lies among the others without announcing itself by a fault. That kind of knowledge is quiet enough to be overlooked by anyone passing through. A visitor might see only dust, benches, trays, and repetitive motion. But we stay long enough to see the skill hidden inside the repetition. It is not showy, it is not theatrical, it is the steady intelligence of hands that have solved the same small problem thousands of times. The afternoon bell, or perhaps only the habit of the room, tells you when the next portion of work begins. Some pencils are ready for smoothing beyond the first turning. Others need their points formed lightly, depending on the workshop's practice and the customer's order. You gather a tray close, and the pile shifts with a soft wooden rustle. A slate pencil does not need a sharp point like a graphite pencil. It writes by wearing. Still, its ends must be usable. Too blunt, and the line is clumsy. Too fragile, and the end snaps the first time it touches a slate board. So you taper or soften the end just enough, holding back from any flourish, because a useful tool asks for restraint. You hold the end to the wheel and rotate it with smaller, more delicate movements. The pressure is almost nothing. The dust rises in a thin breath, then settles on the bench near your wrist. You check the point against your thumb, not by pressing hard, but by letting the surface pass over the skin. It should be firm, smooth, and ready. The sound of this finishing is quieter than the earlier shaping. It makes room for other noises. You hear someone sweeping near the door, the bristles dragging through dust that resists being gathered. You hear a horse outside snort and stamp. You hear a distant bell measure the city's afternoon, though inside the shop, time is counted mostly in trays. Dust is both companion and burden. It shows where work has been done. It reveals the air's slow currents. It softens the look of everything, even the harsh edges of tools. Yet it also enters lungs, dries throats, irritates eyes, and makes cleanliness a daily struggle. The 1910s worker may not speak in modern medical terms, but the body knows what the body is breathing. You learn to keep your face a little back from the wheel. You learn not to blow dust toward another worker. You learn to brush the bench gently, because a sharp sweep only lifts the powder into the light. The rag used for wiping becomes grey almost at once. The floor carries pale footprints where boots have walked through settled slate. If there is ventilation, it is simple. A window opened, a door set ajar, perhaps a hood or pipe in a better equipped shop, though many small rooms rely on drafts, habit, and endurance. On damp days, dust settles faster but clings more stubbornly. On dry days, it floats longer, making the shafts of light visible and making every breath feel slightly powdered. We can feel why the job was hard without making it harsh. The workshop is not a place of constant disaster. It is a place of steady strain, where the ordinary facts of earning money live beside ordinary comforts. A shared joke may pass between benches. Someone may hum a tune under the wheel's sound. A worker may keep a small charm, a folded note, or a family photograph tucked away from the dust. Your own small habits carry you. You align the blanks before beginning. You keep the best light falling from the left if you can. You place broken pieces in the same corner every time, so your hand does not search. These habits save effort. They make a narrow job livable by removing the need to decide what can simply be done. The ROUEN slate pencil turner also lives by the rhythm of orders. Some weeks may be busier before school terms. Merchants need stock. Bundles must be ready. The workshop feels the demand before the children do, before the first copybooks open, and the slate boards are lifted from desks. Your hands become part of an invisible calendar. When orders are heavy, small delays matter. A worn belt, a poor batch of slate, a shortage of wrapping paper, or damp weather slowing delivery can trouble the whole chain. The workers may feel this as pressure, even if no one raises a voice. The trays must fill. The bundles must be counted. The cart must leave when it is expected. Counting is another quiet part of the day. Pencils are gathered by dozens, sometimes by gross, depending on the order and practice. You align them so the bundle sits neat in the hand. The little rods knock together with a dry, hollow sound. A crooked one reveals itself immediately in the group, and you pull it out before the wrapper closes. The paper used for wrapping has its own feel. It may be coarse, slightly fibrous, and easy to crease. If labels are used, they carry the maker's name, the place, and perhaps a promise of quality. The printed ink smells faintly sharp. String or paper bands hold the pencils together, and the bundle becomes a small, saleable thing, tidy enough for a shelf. You may not be the one who wraps every bundle, but you know the work. A bundle that looks poor can undo good turning. If the pencils rattle loosely, ends chip. If they are tied too tight, weaker rods may crack. If dust is not brushed away, the package arrives already looking neglected. Even the final handling must be quiet and exact. There is dignity in this chain of care, not grand dignity, and not the kind written on monuments, but the smaller kind that belongs to useful objects made well. A slate pencil is inexpensive, perhaps easily lost, but it enters the daily learning of a child. It helps form letters before ink is trusted. It lets mistakes be wiped away, which is a mercy in any classroom. The thought of errors may drift near us here, though the worker's mind remains mostly with the tray. In the 1910s, fountain pens, steel nibs, chalk, and graphite pencils all have their places, and paper is becoming more common in many schools. Yet slate boards and slate pencils still endure, especially where economy matters. Reuse is not a style. It is necessity. A child with a slate can practice without wasting paper. A teacher can see the work and have it wiped clean. The pale scratch of slate pencil against slate board becomes one of the sounds of schooling. Behind that familiar sound lies the Rouen worker, seated in the grey light, turning rod after rod with a patience the child will never be asked to imagine. That is often the way of work. The user meets only the finished object. The maker knows the hidden sequence. You know the cold blank, the imperfect grain, the wheels pull, the sorting tray, the ache at the base of the thumb, and the small satisfaction when a dozen pencils lie even and ready. The world receives simplicity because someone else handled complexity quietly. The afternoon moves on. Your stool creaks as you shift again. A line of dust marks the edge of your apron, where it folds across your lap. The bench has warmed under your forearms, though the slate remains cool. You look at the tray and see that it is lower than before, which is its own encouragement, mild and practical. We follow your hands now through another set of blanks. The first is too brittle and goes aside. The second rounds cleanly. The third has a hidden flaw near the end, but the length can be shortened and saved if the workshop permits it. The fourth hums beautifully under the wheel, and you let yourself enjoy that brief obedience, the way the surface becomes true with almost no resistance. Such moments are small, but workers know them. The saw that bites cleanly, the needle that passes smoothly, the loaf that rises properly, the hinge that fits without filing. In the Rouen slate pencil shop, the clean turning rod gives its own quiet pleasure, and your tired hands feel, for a few seconds, that the material and the worker have agreed. Outside, the day may be bright or wet, but inside the shop the weather arrives softened. Rain makes the yard smell of mud, horse leather, and wet stone. Sun makes dust brighter on the sill. Wind presses at the door and carries street sounds in sudden fragments. You notice these things without leaving the bench, because the senses learn to travel while the body stays. A worker's mind during repetitive labor is not empty. It wanders in short, practical circles. You may think of supper, rent, a child's cough, a torn boot, the market price of potatoes, or the letter someone promised to send. Then the pencil wobbles, and your attention returns at once. The work permits drifting only within limits. It calls you back by touch. This is another reason the job is hard. It is monotonous, but it cannot be ignored. It is repetitive, but not automatic. A truly automatic motion would let the mind go far away, but slate turning keeps one thread tied to the wheel. You can dream a little, remember a little, worry a little, yet your fingers must remain awake. The ROUEN slate pencil turner lives in that middle state for hours, not fully free to think, not fully consumed by novelty. The same object repeats with just enough variation to require care. Each pencil is almost the same, and not quite the same. The mind learns a soft vigilance, neither sharp nor sleepy, watching for the small exception. We might think of the body as the true measuring instrument. The eye sees straightness, the ear hears chatter, the thumb feels ridges, the wrist senses pressure, and the nose knows when oil is warming too much in the bearing nearby. No single sense carries the trade. They work together, quietly, until the worker can respond before forming the thought in words. Late in the afternoon, the room may grow more talkative for a short while. Fatigue loosens silence. Someone asks for a tool. Someone remarks that the batch is poor. Someone laughs under their breath at a story from the yard. The voices are not loud, because the machines fill the space and because everyone is still counting, turning, judging, and trying not to lose the rhythm. You answer if spoken to, but your eyes stay near your hands. Conversation must fit between motions. Words are shaped around work, not the other way around. A question may wait until the pencil is safely in the tray. A reply may come after a broken piece is set aside. In such rooms, courtesy often means not distracting a person at the wrong instant. There are workers who become known for speed. There are workers known for neatness. There are workers who can coax usable pencils from poor slate, and others who waste less because their first judgment is sound. These reputations matter in a modest way. They may affect who is trusted with finer orders, who trains younger hands, or who is kept when work is thin. But the day does not pause to admire anyone. The wheel turns, the tray empties and fills. Dust settles on the sill. The ROUEN slate pencil turner keeps working, because the measure of the day is concrete. There will be a count at the end. There will be bundles, rejects, and perhaps a note about the quality of the slate received. The hands of the turner are not delicate in the idle sense, but they are sensitive. They may be roughened by labor, yet they feel minute changes in surface. They may be cracked in cold weather, yet they can detect a ridge too small for a casual eye. That combination of toughness and sensitivity belongs to many manual trades, and it is learned through use rather than instruction. You flex your fingers and continue. The next blank is darker than the others, almost blue-gray when it turns in the light. It may write slightly differently, harder or softer depending on its composition. Slate is not one uniform thing. Its layers hold variations, and the worker notices them as the musician notices the temper of strings or reeds. There is science inside the material, though the workshop names it more simply. Some slate cleaves well, some resists, some powders finely under the wheel, while some produces tiny chips. The clay minerals, pressure, and ancient layering matter, but at the bench the knowledge arrives as feel. This batch is good. This one is troublesome. This piece will split if you ask too much. We keep the language close to the hand, because that is how the worker knows the world. A factory ledger may record costs and quantities, but the turner's truth is in texture. The blank is cold, the edge is sharp, the wheel is too dry, the dust is heavy today, the rod hums correctly. These are the facts that govern the hour. A narrow pencil rolls away and stops against a strip of wood nailed to the bench for that very purpose. Without the strip, half the day would be spent rescuing pencils from the floor. Small arrangements like this reveal the intelligence of the workplace. A block here, a notch there, a tray angled slightly toward the worker, all shaped by annoyance slowly turned into design. The floor beneath you carries the evidence of years. Dust darkens in the cracks between boards. Dropped pieces leave faint marks. A stool leg has worn a shallow crescent where it shifts each day. If you look closely, The whole shop is a record of repeated movement, as readable in its way as writing on a slate. Perhaps that is fitting. The pencil exists to make marks that can vanish. The workshop that makes it gathers marks that remain longer. Worn wood, polished tool handles, darkened apron hooks, and the smooth edge of a sorting tray all keep the memory of hands. You add to that memory simply by working, hour after hour, in the same careful place. When a pencil comes out well, you place it with others in a row, their ends nearly even. The sight is restful. Order has appeared from roughness. It is not dramatic order, only practical order, but the tired mind appreciates it. Straight pencils in a tray mean the day has not been wasted. They mean the body's small aches have become something usable. The difficulty of the job is also in its modest reward. A slate pencil is cheap because it must be cheap. Schools and families buy them because they are useful and inexpensive. That leaves little room for lavish wages or leisurely pace. The worker's skill hides inside affordability, and affordability often asks the worker to do much for little notice. Still, the shop is not only a place of hardship, it is a place where people know one another's rhythms. Someone may shift a tray closer when your hands are full. Someone may warn you about a bad batch. Someone may share a crust of bread or a bit of news. These gestures are small, but in a repetitive day, small kindnesses have enough room to be felt. The city beyond the workshop keeps moving toward evening. Hooves pass, then fade. A cartman calls to his horse. Somewhere a door bangs and settles. The smell of cooking begins to appear in brief traces when the wind is right. Onions perhaps, or broth, or cabbage softening in a pot. Your stomach notices before your mind does. There is one more stretch before stopping. This part can be the hardest because the end is near enough to imagine, but not near enough to reach. The body begins to bargain with itself. One more tray, one more bundle, one more set of blanks turned cleanly before the wheel is quiet. You do not rush, because the last hour can spoil work as easily as the first. A tired worker breaks pencils differently from a careless one. The pressure grows uneven. The hand lingers too long at the wheel. The rotation slows without meaning to. The eye accepts a small fault because it wants the tray finished. Experience teaches you to distrust that late-day softness in judgment. You check again, even when you would rather place the pencil down and be done. The Rouen slate pencil turner's work in the 1910s sits at a moment when old and newer worlds overlap. Hand skill remains essential, but industrial supply chains stretch farther. Goods travel by rail, river, and cart. Schooling expands, paper slowly becomes more available, and writing tools change. Yet here, the day is still measured by a narrow stone rod turning under the fingers. There may be talk of change, though it arrives unevenly. Some say orders are not what they were. Some say schools use more paper now. Some say better pencils come from elsewhere, or cheaper ones, or too many. Such talk belongs to breaks and doorways. At the bench, change becomes real only when the order sheets change, when fewer trays wait, or when different materials appear. For now, the work continues. You pick up another blank. You meet the wheel. The corners vanish. The rod grows round. You lift it, feel it, roll it, and place it down. This sequence is simple enough to say in one breath, but it contains a whole day when lived slowly. The body knows every hinge in the motion. The light begins to lower. In winter, lamps may be needed before the shift is done. Lamplight changes the surface of slate, making ridges show differently. Shadows deepen under the hands. The dust glows near the flame or bulb, depending on the shop's fittings, and the room becomes more intimate, more enclosed, as if the world outside has stepped away. Under lamplight, the sound of work feels closer. The wheel's hum seems to gather around the bench. The clink of pencils in the tray becomes sharper. A cough travels farther. You feel the presence of others without looking up. Each person held in a small circle of light and dust, each pair of hands carrying a similar tired care. If electricity has reached the workshop, it may be practical rather than grand. A bulb hangs, perhaps not bright enough, perhaps flickering when machinery strains. If lamps are still used in some corners, they add a smell of fuel and warm metal. Either way, the light is part of the labor. Poor light makes poor work more likely, and the eyes pay for it. Your eyes have worked all day in grey. Grey slate, grey dust, grey shadow, grey cloth, grey weather on the window. A coloured thing can startle softly in such a room. A red thread at someone's cuff, a blue lunchcloth, the brown crust of bread, the yellow of lamplight on a tool handle. These small colours become restful because they are rare. We keep moving with the shift because there is no sudden ending in such work. The day winds down through tasks. Wheels slow only after trays are safe. Tools are set aside. Finished pencils are covered, boxed or moved away from dust if possible. Rejects are gathered. The bench is brushed, though never perfectly clean, because slate dust belongs to the place as much as sawdust belongs to a carpenter's floor. Sweeping must be done with care. A hard broom stroke lifts clouds that settle in hair and throat. A damp cloth may help on some surfaces, though too much damp is not welcome near paper wrappers or certain storage. You learn where dust can be tolerated and where it cannot. You learn that cleaning a workshop is less like erasing and more like negotiating with what the work itself produces. Your hands leave pale prints on the broom handle. The floor's dust gathers into soft ridges, broken by chips and tiny rod ends. Some scraps may be collected for other uses if the shop has any, but much is simply waste. The rejected pieces look strangely complete at a glance, until you see the crack, curve, or thin place that condemned them. There is a feeling at day's end when a machine stops after many hours. The absence arrives almost as a sound. Your ears keep expecting the hum. Your hands still remember the vibration. The room seems larger without the belt's movement, and small noises come forward. Breathing, footsteps, paper, a chair pushed back, the faint settling creak of wood cooling. The 1910s ROUEN slate pencil turner rises carefully, because the back may object after so much stillness. Standing changes the body's complaints. The neck relaxes slightly, the knees speak, the shoulders feel the day's narrow posture. You brush your apron and dust falls in a pale mist around your boots. It is not all gone. It never is all gone. At the wash basin, the water clouds almost immediately. Grey streams run from your fingers. The slate that made pencils all day now swirls in the bowl and settles toward the bottom. You rub the knuckles, the nails, the lines of the palm. The skin beneath appears slowly, though the deepest creases keep a faint shadow of the work. Washing has its own pleasure. The cool water is ordinary and welcome. It loosens dust from the wrists. It eases the dry feeling between the fingers. Someone may wait behind you, shifting from one foot to the other, and so you do not linger too long. Yet for a few moments, the hands return from being instruments to being yours again. Your coat smells of the city when you lift it from the peg, but also of the workshop. Wool, dust, smoke, and damp wood cling together. You pull it on. The air near the door feels colder after the close room. Outside, Rouen is gathering evening, with lamps beginning to show through mist and the stones of the street holding the day's damp. The walk home is part of the job's rhythm, though no ledger counts it. Your hands may still curl slightly as if holding blanks. Your ears carry the wheel's hum for a little while. If you pass a school or a stationer's window, you may notice slate boards and pencils differently from other people. You know the labor hidden inside the small price. Perhaps you stop at a baker or walk directly to a narrow room where supper waits. The body wants warmth, food, and a chair that allows the back to rest. The mind may not want much conversation at first. It has spent the day in tiny judgments. Quiet is not emptiness now. Quiet is recovery. At home, slate dust may still appear when you remove your coat. It may mark the cuff, the hairline, the edge of a sleeve. A family member may brush it away without comment, because this is part of what work brings through the door. Every trade carries something home: flour, coal, ink, grease, wool fibers, tannin, smoke, or the mineral grey of slate. The wages from such work must stretch into ordinary needs: rent, bread, fuel, repairs, shoes, medicine, and the small expenses that appear without asking. This makes the workshop's repetitions more than motions. Each pencil belongs, indirectly, to the week's survival. The work is quiet, but its necessity is not abstract. It is there in the cupboard, the stove, and the patched sleeve. We do not need to make the evening sad. There is comfort in returning, in washing, in sitting, in feeling the body slow. The hard day has an edge, but it also has completion, a tray filled, a count made, a skill used, a small place held in the wide machinery of city life. The Rouen slate pencil turner may sleep with hands still remembering the wheel. Morning will come again, and the shop will gather its people back under the same dusty light. Before that, there is night. Streets quiet by degrees. The Seine moves through Rouen with its dark, patient surface, carrying reflections of lamps and warehouse windows. The city's larger industries settle and stir in patches, while the small workshops close their shutters and let the benches rest. When we return to the beginning of the next day, nothing looks new at first. The same door opens, the same bench waits, the same trays hold blanks that seem almost identical to yesterday's blanks. But your body is never exactly yesterday's body, and the slate is never exactly yesterday's slate. That is enough to make the familiar work ask again for attention. The first touch of the morning repeats the lesson. Cool stone, turning wheel, fine dust, the rod between finger and thumb. The 1910s ROUEN slate pencil turner begins again not because the task is easy, but because routine is how difficult things become possible. The day is broken into small enough motions for a person to carry. A visitor might ask why the pencils cannot simply be made faster. You would not have a simple answer, because faster is not one thing. Faster can mean more breakage, poorer finish, more dust, more waste, more tiredness, or more rejected bundles. The pace of the work is not laziness. It is the pace at which stone, machine, and hand can agree. The hand must also protect itself. You adjust your grip to avoid rubbing the same place raw. You shift your elbows slightly to spare the shoulder. You learn when to use the flat of the finger and when to pinch more firmly. These small strategies are rarely named, but they are the worker's private engineering, the body solving problems while the mind calls it habit. If you listen closely, each pencil has a small voice against the wheel. Harder slate gives a sharper note. Softer slate produces a fuller rasp and more powder. A flaw may announce itself as a tremor. You begin to trust sound almost as much as sight. In a dim shop, that trust matters because the ears do not need daylight to warn you. The turning process may seem narrow, yet it belongs to a whole family of shaping tasks found in many trades. Buttons, beads, dowels, metal pins, bobbins, and tool handles all require material to become regular under rotation, pressure, and judgment. The slate pencil is humbler than most, but its making shares that old human wish to bring roundness out of roughness. Roundness is useful. It lets the pencil sit comfortably in a child's hand. It prevents sharp corners from cutting paper wrappers or rubbing through a pocket. It makes the object feel finished, even if it will be worn away. You turn for comfort as much as appearance, though the user may only notice if the comfort is absent. The Rouen workshop might source slate from regions known for roofing and school slates, where layered stone could be split into flat sheets or cut into narrow strips. Transportation links mattered. River, rail, and road brought materials into the city and carried finished goods out. At your bench, those larger systems become a tray within reach and an order that must be filled. You do not need to see the whole chain to feel its pressure. If the slate arrives late, work waits. If the slate is poor, hands struggle. If the merchant complains, the foreman tightens his look over the trays. The worker stands at the point where distant geology, trade, schooling, and household economy all narrow into one pencil under one thumb. There is a humility in that position, but not insignificance. We often imagine history through large events and famous names, while most of daily life is made by people doing small jobs well enough for others to proceed. The child learns sums because there is a slate and pencil. The pencil exists because the turner sat in grey light and shaped it. You choose another blank and continue. The motion is now so familiar that describing it feels slower than doing it. Still, when we slow down, we see its parts. The left hand selects, the right hand presents, the fingers rotate, the wheel removes, the eye judges, the thumb confirms. The tray receives, the sequence closes, and another begins. A long day has many such closed circles. Some are perfect, some are interrupted. A broken rod breaks the circle. A cough interrupts it. A question from the foreman interrupts it. Then the circle begins again. Repetition does not erase time. It beads time into small units, each one held briefly, then set down with the finished pencil. In certain hours, the mind may find comfort in that beaded time. There is less room for large worry when attention narrows to the object at hand. Not no room, of course. Worry is persistent, but the pencil insists on its little present tense, and for a while your world becomes the length of a slate rod and the pressure of 2 fingers. This is part of the sleepiness of the work when remembered from a distance. The wheel hums, the dust floats, the same motion returns, yet inside the day, sleepiness must be resisted. The worker cannot drift too far. A pencil held wrongly can snap and nick the skin. A tray dropped can waste an hour's labor. Routine is calming only when attention remains nearby. We stay nearby too. We notice the edge of the bench polished by wrists. We notice the notch cut into a tray handle. We notice a smear of oil on the floor where a machine was tended. We notice the way workers place personal mugs in spots safe from dust, though nothing is entirely safe from dust in such a room. A worker may bring a cloth to cover food. The cloth itself becomes grey at the folds. Bread eaten in the workshop may have a faint mineral taste if one is careless, so you learn to wrap it well and wash before eating. Such details seem small until they belong to every day. Then they become part of how life is arranged around labor. The difficulty of the Rouen slate pencil turner's job also lies in invisibility. A broken slate roof is seen. A printed book carries a printer's pride. A carved chair may be admired for years, but slate pencils vanish through use. They are consumed by practice, by mistakes, by lessons repeated until the pencil is too short to hold. There is something tender in making a vanishing tool. You do not carve your name into it. You do not expect it to return. Its purpose is to give itself away in pale marks, each one erased after serving its moment. In that sense, the pencil's life is close to the worker's motion, appearing, helping, and disappearing into the larger day. The shop's accounts may not speak this way. They speak of quantities, costs, deliveries, breakage, and orders. Yet human work always contains more than accounts can hold. It contains the feel of the morning air, the ache in the wrist, the shared glance after a machine finally runs smoothly, and the quiet satisfaction of a tray filled without too many rejects. By another afternoon, you may be assigned to inspect a batch already turned by younger hands. This is slower in a different way. You pick up each pencil and become the last defense against poor work. The young worker watches perhaps, pretending not to watch, while you sort good from doubtful with a calm that took years to learn. You do not reject harshly if you can avoid it. You may show the flaw by rolling the pencil or passing a thumb over a ridge. The lesson is in the object. See here the bend. Feel here the roughness. Listen when it taps differently. In workshops, teaching often happens through things placed in the hand rather than through long explanation. The younger worker nods, perhaps embarrassed, perhaps grateful. You remember the first time someone corrected your work. The face may be gone from memory, but the feeling remains, the sudden understanding that a small fault visible to skilled eyes had been invisible to yours. Skill begins with such moments. It continues through thousands more. The Rouen slate pencil turner must accept that mastery never removes variation. Even experienced hands meet bad slate, poor light, tired muscles, and days when nothing seems to move cleanly. The difference is not that the skilled worker has no trouble. The difference is that trouble is noticed early, answered gently, and kept from spreading too far through the batch. That is a quiet lesson beyond the shop. Many things in life are not made perfect by force, but kept usable by early attention. A wobble heard soon, a crack seen before pressure, a tired hand rested before it spoils the work. The pencil teaches this in its own mineral language, though no one in the workshop may say it aloud. At times, the work may include preparing the blanks before turning. Narrow strips must be cut or shaped from larger pieces. This can bring sharper edges, more chips, and a different kind of caution. The slate breaks along planes, and you respect those planes. You do not bully the material into being something it cannot be. You find the shape it can safely become. Cutting and turning belong together, but each has its own sound. Cutting gives clearer snaps and ticks, a more decisive break. Turning gives continuous breath, a rasp that changes with pressure. Sorting gives taps, rolls, and the dry shuffle of finished rods. Packing gives paper, string, and the soft compression of many pencils brought into one bundle. Together, these sounds make the day's music, low and practical. You might not call it music while living it, but later, lying in bed, the pattern may return. The wheel hums somewhere in memory. The tray answers, the pencil rolls, the broom passes over boards. Then sleep comes, carrying the sounds away without asking permission. The workshop's windows may be set high enough that you see more sky than street. This is common in places where light matters but distraction is not invited. The sky above Rouen changes from pearl to white, to dull silver, and sometimes a patch of blue appears like a promise of air beyond dust. You glance up only briefly, because the hand has work. On wet days, drops move slowly down the glass, leaving clean lines through powder at the sill. On cold days, the panes may fog near the edges. On bright days, the dust in the air becomes almost beautiful, each particle briefly visible before it settles on hair, sleeve, bench, and tray. Beauty and nuisance can be the same thing, depending on whether you are looking or breathing. We keep returning to dust because the worker cannot escape it. It is the atmosphere of the trade. The slate pencil is made by removing slate, and what is removed must go somewhere. It coats the workplace. It enters the washing water. It marks the worker's clothes. It softens footsteps. It turns the beam of light into something you can almost touch. There may be rules about cleanliness, spoken or unspoken. Keep finished bundles away from damp. Do not let food sit uncovered. Brush trays before packing. Clear chips from the floor so no one slips. Keep oil from staining the pencils. These are not grand regulations, but they preserve order in a room where fine powder wants to settle on everything equally. The worker's clothing is chosen for endurance, not display. Sleeves may be rolled or buttoned close. An apron protects but also gathers dust. Boots must stand on floors that are gritty, sometimes damp near the entrance, and worn smooth in pathways. A cap or scarf may keep hair cleaner, though nothing keeps it entirely clean by day's end. Your posture becomes part of the uniform too, leaning, steadying, lifting, turning. The body takes the shape of the task while the task is being done. If someone saw you from behind, they might know the trade by the set of your shoulders, not bent in defeat, simply arranged around the bench, around the wheel, around the need to see closely and move carefully. The 1910s in Rouen bring their own pressures outside the shop. Prices change. Families crowd into working neighborhoods. News travels through newspapers, cafes, church steps, and factory yards. But the slate pencil turner's day filters all this through labor. Large events may be discussed in pauses, yet the immediate question remains whether the next pencil will survive the wheel. This narrowness can be tiring, and it can also be sheltering. While you work, the hand's problem is clear. Too square, make round. Too rough, smooth. Too weak, reject. Too dusty, brush. Many of life's troubles cannot be solved so directly. The bench offers no escape from them, but it offers a few hours of problems small enough to hold. There is comfort in a tool that does one thing. The slate pencil writes on slate. It does not pretend to permanence. It does not ask for ink. It does not need sharpening in the same way as graphite. It leaves a light line, and the line can be wiped away. The worker who makes it may understand this modest usefulness better than anyone. You might test a pencil now and then on a scrap of slate, kept for that purpose. The sound is familiar. A fine scratch, not unpleasant if it is smooth, harsh if the point is wrong. The line should be pale enough to see, even enough to trust. You wipe it with a cloth or thumb, and the mark fades into a ghost before disappearing. Testing connects maker and user for a brief moment. You hold the pencil as a child will hold it, though with older fingers and a worker's eye. You feel whether it drags or skates. You see whether the line breaks. Then the pencil returns to the tray, no longer just shaped, but proven in its small purpose. Some slate pencils may be wrapped with paper around part of the body, depending on market and style, giving the user a cleaner grip. If that is done, another task enters the room: cutting strips, pasting, rolling, drying, and keeping the wrap neat. Paper brings its own smell, faintly woody and damp with paste. and its own difficulties in a dusty shop. Paste must not clump. Paper must not wrinkle. A wrap must sit straight or the pencil looks careless, even if the slate beneath is sound. The fingers that turned stone now handle something softer, more easily stained. You feel the contrast at once. Slate resists, paper yields. Both can be spoiled by haste. In cheaper bundles there may be no wrapping at all, only the bare grey rod. Such pencils leave dust on the hand, but they are simple and affordable. The choice belongs partly to customers and partly to cost. The worker may make both kinds without much comment, adjusting the later tasks while the turning itself remains the central labor. A shop that makes school goods may hold other materials nearby. Wooden slate frames, small boards, chalk, paper labels, packing crates, and twine may share space with the pencil work. Each material has its smell and texture. Wood smells warmer than slate. Chalk feels softer. Twine bites the finger when pulled tight. Crates carry splinters and the scent of rough pine. But the slate pencil keeps its own character. It is neither soft chalk nor wooden pencil. It belongs to a particular moment in writing history, when reusable slates sat in classrooms and homes, when practice could be made visible and then wiped away. The Rouen turner works inside that moment, shaping a tool perfectly suited to impermanent learning. Impermanence can be restful to think about. A child's wrong sum disappears. A crooked letter is wiped clean. The slate is ready again. The pencil grows shorter through use, but it gives the learner another chance each time. In a quiet way, the turner makes a tool of patience. Though the workshop itself may not always feel patient, your own patience is practical. You do not float above the work in gentle thoughts all day. You endure small irritations, a splinter in the bench, a belt slipping, a batch of rods that break too often, a cold draft across the ankles, a supervisor counting too closely. The calm of the trade, when seen from far away, is made from many small discomforts carried without fuss. We can hold both truths at once. The work is soothing to describe, because its motions are rhythmic and its objects modest. The work is hard to live, because rhythm can become wear, and modest objects can still demand exact care. The listener can rest inside the description, while the worker within it earns that rest through patient effort. The day advances, and another tray comes to the bench. At first, it looks discouraging. More blanks, more grey rods, more of the same. Then the hands begin, and the tray becomes less like a burden and more like a path. You do not cross it all at once. You cross it one pencil at a time, the only way it can be crossed. This is the wisdom of repetitive work, if we are gentle enough to hear it. A large duty becomes bearable when divided into motions small enough for the hand. The worker does not make all the pencils at once. You make this one, then the next. The finished tray grows almost unnoticed as sleep grows from one breath into another. A clock may hang in the room, but workers do not want to look too often. Time slows when watched too closely. Better to measure by progress, by the level of the tray, by the change in light, by the familiar ache that says the hour has moved even if the hands have not counted minutes. The body becomes its own clock, not exact, but faithful. In the 1910s Rouen slate pencil workshop, sound replaces silence, yet the sound can become a kind of quiet. Once the belt, wheel, scrape, and tap have settled into the background, they stop demanding attention. They make a blanket of labor around the room. Under that blanket, people think, endure, and work side by side. Now and then, something cuts through it. A pencil snapping near the wheel. A tray dropped too hard, the foreman's voice. A cart rattling close outside. These sounds do not create drama, but they remind the room of itself. Heads lift briefly, then lower again. The ordinary pattern absorbs the interruption and continues. You may notice the age of tools around you, a handle darkened by older hands, a gauge with edges softened from years of checking, a stool repaired with a mismatched piece of wood. Workshops are full of continuities that no one names. New workers arrive, old workers leave, but certain objects remain, gathering touch until they seem almost to belong to the building. If you inherited a tool from another worker, you might keep it close, not because it is precious in money, but because its balance suits the hand. A simple wooden gauge or smoothing block can feel personal after enough use. The trade is full of such loyalties, modest and unspoken, between worker and object. The slate itself offers no warmth, so warmth must come from elsewhere. From the body, the stove, the cup, the shared word, the rhythm that prevents despair, the satisfaction of doing the small thing correctly. Warmth in a workshop is not only temperature, it is the human presence that keeps repetition from becoming emptiness. We have been beside the Rouen slate pencil turner for many hours now, and the details have become familiar. That familiarity is part of the atmosphere. The bench no longer feels strange. The dust no longer surprises. The wheel's voice has become a constant companion. Even the difficulty has a known shape, which makes it easier to approach slowly. There are still new things to notice. The way a pencil leaves a pale mark across the worker's cuff when carried too close. The way dust gathers at the base of the window latch. The way a rejected rod, broken cleanly, shows layers inside like very fine pages pressed together. The way the finished pencils sound different from blanks when moved in a tray, lighter and more orderly. A good worker notices because noticing prevents waste. It also keeps the mind alive. Repetition without noticing becomes dull suffering. Repetition with noticing becomes craft, even when the craft is humble. You look, listen, feel, adjust, and continue. The world at the bench is small, but it is not empty. By late day, the foreman may check the count. Finished bundles are stacked, perhaps in shallow boxes or crates. Labels face one way. Bad pieces sit apart. The day's effort has become visible enough to be moved. This matters. A worker who spends hours on tiny objects needs to see accumulation, to know that all those small motions have gathered into something countable. The crates themselves may be marked for a merchant, school supplier, or wholesaler. From Rouen, they may travel by cart to a station, by rail to another city, or by river toward other markets. The pencils will leave the dusty room and enter shops with cleaner windows. They will wait in drawers, boxes, or counters until someone asks for them, without imagining the turning wheel. A shopkeeper may lift a bundle and judge it quickly. Straight enough, good color, fair price. The decision takes a moment. The making took many hands and many hours. That difference between making and buying is one of the quiet facts of industrial life. The buyer meets the object when its troubles have already been solved. You may never know where your pencils go. This anonymity can feel ordinary rather than sad. Most workers do not follow the path of each object. A baker does not watch every loaf eaten. A washerwoman does not see every clean shirt worn. A pencil turner does not hear every slate scratch. The work is released, and the day moves on. Still, when we imagine it, the connection lengthens softly. A pencil from your tray may arrive in a village school, where morning light falls on desks worn smooth by elbows. It may be held by a child learning to shape letters, each curve awkward at first. The child presses too hard. The pencil squeaks. The teacher says to try again. The slate is wiped clean. That wiped clean surface is part of why slate mattered. Paper could be scarce or costly. Ink could blot. Copybooks preserved errors. The slate allowed practice without permanence. The slate pencil made temporary thought visible. In that modest function, the turner's work supported patience in learning, the kind of patience that lets mistakes exist briefly and then vanish. Back in the workshop, mistakes are less easily erased. A broken rod remains broken. A pencil turned too thin cannot be restored. But the worker also begins again, with the next blank. There is a kind of mercy in having another piece to try. The tray offers many chances, though each chance must still be handled carefully. Your fingers remember the best pressure from earlier in the day. Even tired, they can find it. This is what practice gives back. It does not remove weariness, but it carries some of the work for you. The body that has repeated a motion thousands of times can continue when the mind is dull, provided you do not abandon attention entirely. The room's air cools toward evening. The dust settles faster as movement slows. Someone closes a window. Someone ties the last bundle of a batch. Someone scratches a count onto paper. The workshop shifts from production to order, from making to putting away. This change is gradual and comforting, because each task prepares the room to rest. You brush the wheel housing, the bench, and the edge of the tray. You check that good pencils are covered or moved. You set aside tools where morning hands will find them. There is no grand ritual. There is only the common sense of work ending well, leaving the next beginning less troubled than it might have been. A final pencil may remain on the bench, overlooked until your hand finds it. You lift it and roll it. It is straight enough, smooth enough, good enough for the bundle waiting nearby. That phrase, good enough, is not careless when spoken by a skilled worker. It means the object meets its purpose without vanity. It means no more slate should be removed for the sake of unnecessary perfection. The hard part of handwork often includes knowing when to stop. Too little effort leaves roughness. Too much effort destroys the piece. The slate pencil teaches this plainly. Each touch of the wheel changes it forever. The worker must decide when usefulness has arrived, then let the object go. Letting go happens all day, into trays, into bundles, into crates, into commerce, into other hands. The turner's relationship with each pencil is brief but complete. You receive the blank, shape it, judge it, and release it. The movement is simple enough to become almost meditative, though the dust, wages, and aching hands keep it rooted in real life. As evening settles over Rouen again, the workshop holds the last warmth of bodies and machines. The benches are paler than they were in the morning. The air is clearer now that the wheels are still, but the smell of slate remains. It is in the boards, the cloth, the shelves, and perhaps in memory itself. You step outside with the others, and the street feels broad after the close room. The sky may be low and silver, or already dark. Lamps shine on damp stones. A bicycle passes with a faint clicking chain. Somewhere nearby, water moves unseen, and the city's old buildings hold the day's smoke along their roofs. The body walks differently after seated labor. At first, legs feel uncertain, as though they have been waiting all day to be consulted. Then they find their pace. The hands hang free, no longer pinching, no longer turning. The fingers may tingle slightly in the cold air. You tuck them into your sleeves or pockets and let them rest. We do not leave the job behind completely when the door closes. The Rouen slate pencil turner carries the day in subtle ways. A grey crescent under a nail, a dry cough, a tenderness in the thumb, a satisfaction in a count met, a private annoyance about a poor batch, a memory of one pencil that turned perfectly, for no reason anyone else would notice. At supper, conversation may return in pieces. The day's events are not dramatic enough to tell as a story, yet they form the substance of life. The machine ran poorly. The new boy improved. The slate was brittle. The foreman expects a larger order tomorrow. Bread was good. Rain may come. These are the evening sentences of working households. Night softens the details. The wheel becomes less immediate. The dust washed from the hands seems far away until you notice it again on the cuff. Sleep comes to a body that has held still and worked hard at the same time. A special kind of tiredness. Not the tiredness of long walking, but of focus, posture, and repeated care. In bed, the mind may replay the motion of turning. This happens with many repetitive jobs. The seamstress sees stitches. The compositor sees letters. The boatman feels the river. The slate pencil turner may feel a rod, rolling between finger and thumb, the wheel taking corners away, the tray receiving the finished piece with a soft tap. That remembered motion can be annoying or soothing, depending on the night. Sometimes it keeps the worker half awake. Sometimes it becomes a cradle for sleep. The mind follows the rod, the wheel, the dust, the tray, again and again, until the sequence loosens and the images drift apart. Morning returns before the body feels entirely new. The city's first sounds arrive through walls and shutters. A cart, a footstep, a bell, a voice in the street. You rise, dress, and step back toward the work because the week continues. The Rouen slate pencil workshop waits with its benches, its trays, and its pale mineral weather indoors. There is comfort in knowing where to go, even when the work is hard. The route through Rouen becomes familiar underfoot. Certain stones are uneven. Certain corners smell of bread, horse, damp cellar, or river air. The seasons change the walk, but not the fact of it. You pass through the city and arrive at the place where your hands are needed. Inside, the morning begins again with preparation. The bench must be cleared of whatever settled overnight. The wheel must be checked. The first tray must be placed within reach. The body must lower itself to the stool and accept the day's posture. These first minutes matter because they set the tone for hours of repetition. A poorly arranged bench costs energy all day. A tray too far away strains the shoulder. A tool hidden under cloth interrupts rhythm. A stool at the wrong height makes the back complain sooner. The experienced worker corrects such things early. It looks like fussing to someone who does not know, but it is simply wisdom measured in aches avoided. The first blank of the morning is often a test of both material and worker. You hold it lightly and let the wheel speak. The slate answers with powder, vibration, and sound. The rod rounds cleanly or refuses. Your hand wakes through the attempt. The room wakes too, one bench after another, until the separate motions become the shared voice of the shop. We have said that the work is hard, and now we can hear why in every detail. Not because each pencil is heavy, but because each pencil is small enough to demand precision. Not because the machine roars, but because it hums for hours. Not because the task changes wildly, but because it changes barely, and the worker must still notice. A slate pencil turner in 1910s ROUEN lives with this narrow attention. The job asks the worker to become steady without becoming dull, quick without becoming rough, economical without becoming careless. These are fine balances. They are not romantic when the wrist hurts, but they are real forms of skill. At the bench, your hands continue. A blank touches the wheel. Corners fall away as dust. A smoothness appears. The pencil rolls under your thumb, and you accept it. Another follows. The morning thickens around the motion. The city outside grows louder, then settles into its own work. While inside, the turning goes on. Some days begin with poorer slate, and the mood of the room changes almost at once. More snaps, more rejects, more small size. You can feel frustration travel from bench to bench without anyone needing to announce it. Bad material makes good workers look wasteful, and that is a particular kind of irritation, quiet but persistent. You handle such a batch more slowly. You test each blank before committing it fully to the wheel. You reduce pressure, change angle, accept shorter usable lengths when possible. The work becomes negotiation. The slate offers less, and your hands ask more carefully. Progress slows, but forcing speed would only fill the reject box faster. The foreman may know the batch is poor. He may still need the order filled. That is another difficulty of industrial work. Knowledge does not always remove pressure. Everyone may understand the problem, and still the count is expected. So the room continues, with extra care, extra waste, and the same pale dust rising from weaker stone. A good batch feels like a relief almost too ordinary to mention. The rods are straighter, the grain is kind, the wheel's sound is steady. Finished pencils gather more quickly, and the worker's confidence returns. You may not smile exactly, but the hands move with less guardedness. The body notices when the material cooperates. We can think of this as a conversation between worker and matter, not a spoken conversation but a real exchange. The slate tells you what it can bear. The wheel tells you how it is cutting. The hand answers by adjusting. A finished pencil is the result of that quiet conversation carried through without impatience. There may be piecework arrangements in some workshops, where pay is tied partly to quantity, or at least where output is watched closely enough to feel similar. In such systems, the temptation is always to move faster. But slate punishes haste. The worker is caught between the need to produce and the need to preserve quality, and the body carries that tension all day. Even if wages are by time, the count matters. A slow worker may be noticed. A wasteful worker may be corrected. A careful worker may still be urged onward when orders rise. The economic facts sit just beyond the bench, invisible but felt, like a draft under a door. They make the same small motion carry more weight than it seems to carry. Your hand turns another pencil, and the rod survives. Good. You place it down. The word good may not be spoken, but the mind registers it. This small inward approval helps. It gives the worker a quiet thread of satisfaction. enough to pass from one pencil to the next without feeling that the day is only loss. Around mid-morning, the dust has already changed the air. The light beams are visible. The sill is pale. Your apron has taken on its working color. Someone shakes a cloth too sharply and is told to stop, not angrily, but with the weary authority of people who must breathe the same air. The cloth is folded instead, and the dust settles back to earth. Breathing is one of the hidden labors, not separate from the job, but woven through it. You breathe through the mouth when the nose is irritated, then regret the dryness. You turn slightly from the densest plume. You drink when you can. These adaptations are small and constant, part of the body's quiet attempt to keep going. The workshop might not understand long-term harm in the way later generations will discuss occupational dust, but workers have always known discomfort. They know which tasks make coughing worse. They know who has trouble in winter. They know that some rooms are close and others better aired. Practical knowledge often arrives long before formal language does. Still, work continues because choices are limited. The job may be hard, but it is a job. Skill in the hand has value. Rouen industries need workers, and workers need wages. We should hold that reality gently, without turning it into bitterness. People often make dignity inside constraints, not because constraints are kind, but because people are resourceful. The pencil in your hand does not know any of this. It asks only to be shaped. You return to the immediate. Cool slate, turning wheel, dust line, thumb test, tray. There is relief in the object's simplicity. Whatever the world outside requires, this pencil requires only correct handling, and for a few seconds, that is enough. As the morning reaches its fullest pace, the workshop seems to breathe as one machine made of many people. Belts move, hands turn, trays shift, tools tap, dust rises and falls. The Rouen slate pencil turner is not isolated, even if the attention is solitary. Each worker is alone with a pencil, and together they make the room's output possible. The shared room brings shared awareness. If someone's wheel begins to sound wrong, others notice. If a worker cuts a finger, nearby hands pause. If a tray is needed, it may be passed without much speech. Cooperation in such places is often practical and understated. It happens because the work goes more smoothly when people are not obstacles to one another. A small cut is not unusual. Slate edges can be sharp before turning. A broken rod can leave a point. The wound may be washed, wrapped, and worked around if it is not too bad. The sting returns whenever dust finds it. You adjust your grip and continue, because stopping for every small injury would stop the day too often. The skin of a worker's hand becomes both shield and instrument. Callus protects, but too much roughness can dull feeling. Tenderness warns, but too much tenderness distracts. The hand is always negotiating between exposure and usefulness. At night, a little oil or grease may soften cracks, though it cannot erase tomorrow's work. We follow these details because they show the truth of quiet labor. Hardship does not always wear a dramatic face. Sometimes it is a thumb rubbed raw in the same place. Sometimes it is a thumb rubbed raw in the same place. Sometimes it is a cough after sweeping. Sometimes it is the need to judge the 100th pencil as carefully as the first, even when the mind would rather drift toward the window. The window offers its own small rest. A cloud crossing the sun, a bird on a roofline, rain beginning as tiny specks on glass, a passerby carrying a basket. These glimpses do not take you away from work, but they widen the room for a moment. Then the wheel hums under your hand, and you return. Rouen itself is a layered city, old stone beside modern trade, church towers above workshops, river traffic beside narrow streets. The slate pencil turner's life touches that whole city through ordinary movement. The walk to work, the shop supplies, the market after wages, the bells that mark hours, the damp that rises from the river and enters bones, walls and slate alike. In a city with so many visible crafts and trades, the pencil turner's corner can seem nearly invisible, yet hidden work is still work. The less people notice an object, the more smoothly it has entered daily life. A slate pencil noticed only when absent has succeeded in becoming ordinary, and ordinary things often carry the deepest histories. By noon, The body asks again for rest. The hands slow slightly before the bell or habit confirms what they already know. You finish the pencil in hand because leaving it half done feels wrong. The wheel carries it through the last turn, and you place it with the others. Only then do you rise, stretch, and let the shoulders drop. Lunch in the workshop has the intimacy of people who are too tired for ceremony. Wrappings open, bread breaks, a knife passes from one hand to another. Someone tells a small story from the street, and someone else answers with a shrug. The taste of food brings the world back into color after the gray morning. Cheese tastes sharp, soup tastes warm. An apple, if there is one, smells clean and bright. You look at your hands while eating and see the work still there. Washing before lunch helps, but the slate remains in the lines. The fingers may tremble faintly from hours of small pressure. You rest them around a cup, letting warmth enter the joints. The cup is chipped perhaps, but it serves, and in such moments service matters more than appearance. There is companionship in shared fatigue. No one needs to explain why the room is quiet for a while. Bodies are recovering. Minds are loosening. The machines, stilled or slowed, leave space for the softer sounds of eating and breathing. Outside, Rouen continues with carts, bells, calls, and footsteps. But inside, the meal hour makes a little island. Then work returns, as it always does. Wrappers fold, cups are set aside. Benches are approached again. The first few motions after lunch feel awkward, as if the hands have briefly forgotten their duty. Then the rhythm settles back, and the afternoon begins its long grey passage through the tray. The afternoon begins with the tray looking fuller than it ought to look, though you know it is only the eye adjusting after rest. The first pencil after the meal is often the one that tells you whether the body has truly returned. You hold it lightly, bring it to the wheel, and wait for the familiar vibration to settle into your fingers. The slate answers with a faint rasp, and the room gathers itself again around that sound. A Rouen slate pencil turner in the 1910s learns that lunch does not divide the day cleanly. The dust before noon and the dust after noon are the same dust. The ache in the thumb is not washed away by soup or bread, yet the short pause changes something in the mind. You come back to the bench with a little more distance, enough to see the work again rather than merely endure it. The wheel's face has warmed from use. When the slate touches it, the powder lifts more readily, and the smell of mineral dust seems drier than it did in the morning. You keep your chin slightly raised, not too close to the work, and let your eyes follow the rod's turning edge. There is a narrow pale line where the corner has just vanished, and that line tells you the pressure is even. Across the shop, the workers settle one by one. A chair scrapes. A tray is dragged nearer. A belt trembles and finds its course. The whole room resumes not suddenly but in layers, as if someone has placed sound back into it by hand. You can feel the shared reluctance fade into habit. Habit is useful. It carries everyone over the first dull rise of afternoon. The hard thing now is keeping judgment alive. The body wants to believe all pencils are alike. The eye wants to accept roughness as finish. The hand wants to place the rod down before checking its full length. You know this mood, so you answer it with small rituals. Roll the pencil. Feel the end. Look once more. Only then place it with the finished ones. The Rouen slate pencil turner's work has very few grand moments, but it has many little thresholds. A rough blank becomes a cylinder. A weak piece reveals itself. A tray of loose rods becomes a bundle. A bundle becomes an order. Each threshold is crossed quietly, without ceremony. And yet the day would collapse without them. You live inside these crossings, again and again. You take a slightly longer blank, perhaps cut from a better section of slate. It sits straighter in the hand. It turns without chatter. For a moment the work seems almost easy, and you know enough not to trust that feeling too much. Ease is welcome, but attention must remain. The pencil can still be spoiled near the end, if your fingers relax before the wheel has finished speaking. There is a soft rhythm in the sequence now. Select, turn, test, place. Select, turn, test, place. The words are not spoken, and perhaps not even thought, but they describe the path your hands are walking. We can rest with that path for a while, because it is the true road of the job. narrower than a street and traveled many hundreds of times in one day. The afternoon light finds the dust on the bench and makes it look almost blue. Slate is never only grey when you study it long enough. Some pieces hold greenish shadows, some carry a purple cast, some are dark as wet roof tiles before the wheel softens them. Your eye becomes intimate with these small differences, because color can hint at hardness, grain, and likely breakage. A young worker nearby may ask whether a certain pencil should pass. You take it, roll it, and feel the slight bend before saying anything. The bend is not large. A customer might not see it in one pencil, but in a bundle it would disturb the whole line. You place it in the doubtful tray, and the young worker watches the decision settle more heavily than a lecture. This is how standards move through a workshop, not written in elegant language, but passed through examples, corrections, and the steady presence of people who know. The Rouen slate pencil turner learns to see with the hand, and then teaches another hand to see. The knowledge is fragile if no one carries it forward, but while the room is alive, it travels from bench to bench. You may think of your own first months, when every decision took longer. The wheel seemed impatient then. The foreman's glance seemed sharper. Your fingers felt clumsy around such thin material, and the reject tray grew faster than you wanted. Now the work is still hard, but it no longer feels mysterious. That change is one of the quiet rewards of staying with a trade. The body pays for that reward. You cannot gain the smooth motion without the hours that shaped it. You cannot hear the floor without all the earlier mistakes that taught you its sound. Skill is often memory stored in muscle, and muscle keeps its records through soreness, callus, and the small protective habits that become invisible to everyone but the worker. The wheel turns, and another pencil rounds beneath your fingers. Slate dust rests on the back of your hand like pale ash. You could brush it away, but more would arrive within moments, so you leave it until it thickens enough to bother you. This is one of the day's tiny bargains. Cleanliness is delayed in order to continue. Comfort is delayed in order to finish. In some workshops, damp cloths might be used to reduce dust on benches, though water and slate make a paste that must be managed. Too much moisture can stain wrappers and make dust cling in ridges. Too little leaves the powder free to rise. The worker knows these balances through use. A cloth is wrung, folded, passed, and set aside when it becomes more burden than help. The smell changes when a damp cloth touches slate dust. It becomes earthier, closer to wet stone after rain. You may notice it and think of Rouen streets in bad weather, the way the pavements darken and shine. Then the wheel calls your attention back, and the wet stone memory folds itself into the dry stone labor of the bench. There are also small dangers in sameness. A tired hand may move too near the wheel. A rod may whip slightly if caught badly. A splintered end may prick before the eye sees it. None of these things turns the job into spectacle, but they keep the worker respectful. The machine is modest, yet it still asks for distance, steadiness, and care. You keep your fingertips where they belong. You do not lean in more than necessary. You let the pencil meet the abrasive surface, not your skin. This knowledge is simple, but simple knowledge must be obeyed hundreds of times. Many workplace injuries begin not in ignorance, but in the brief moment when the body is tired enough to forget what it already knows. A slate pencil turner's hands are always near the point where useful pressure becomes harm. That narrowness defines the work. Too far away and nothing happens. Too close and the blank breaks or the fingers suffer. We remain with that narrow space, because it holds the whole difficulty of the trade, the thin line between making and spoiling. The afternoon may bring inspection from someone concerned with orders, not technique. He sees counts, not wrists. He asks how many bundles are ready, whether the labels have arrived, whether the cart can leave before the rain. His questions matter, but they belong to a different layer of the same work. You answer if asked, then return to the pencil that knows nothing of delivery schedules. Commerce presses gently but firmly against the bench. A school needs supplies. A shop needs stock. A wholesaler expects a shipment. The slate must move from earth to classroom through many hands, and every delay has someone waiting at the other end. The Rouen worker feels this through the simple fact that the tray must not remain full too long. Yet speed alone cannot satisfy commerce if the goods fail. A poor pencil teaches the customer distrust. A bundle with broken pieces returns as complaint. The turner sits at the place where speed and trust must be reconciled. You cannot write that reconciliation on a ledger. You enact it with each careful second at the wheel. The pencil in your hand has a faint dark streak along one side. You turn it slowly, testing whether the streak is only color or a weakness in the grain. The wheel smooths it without trouble, and the rod holds. Good. You roll it on the board, feel the end, and place it with the others. The decision passes through you and disappears into the growing count. A bell from outside reaches the room, softened by distance and machinery. It may be from a church, a school, or a public clock. In Rouen, bells belong to the air as much as smoke and river damp. They remind you that the city keeps several kinds of time: sacred time, civic time, factory time, and the private time of a tired hand moving from one blank to the next. The worker's private time can stretch strangely. 10 minutes of difficult slate may feel longer than an hour of clean turning. A good rhythm can make the afternoon slide quietly forward. A faulty wheel makes every minute noticeable. You do not need a clock to know whether the day is moving kindly. The bench tells you. Now the tray of finished pencils is full enough to be moved. You lift it carefully with both hands. The rods shift, tapping against one another in a light, dry murmur. The weight is not great, but it is awkward, because a careless tilt can spill the work of an hour. You carry it to the sorting table or pass it to someone whose hands are waiting. The empty tray returned to your bench has its own feeling. Relief, briefly. Space, briefly. Then another tray arrives, and the briefness is part of the lesson. Industrial work often offers these tiny rests inside continuation. A cleared surface, a finished bundle, a wheel stopped for oil. They are not the end, but they let the worker breathe between portions of the same long task. At the sorting table, the pencils are handled again. No object leaves the shop on the strength of one glance. A second pair of hands may find what the first missed. This can be humbling, but it is sensible. Fatigue belongs to everyone. Quality is protected by repeated attention, not by the pride of any single worker. You may rotate from turning to sorting later in the day, especially if the workshop is small. The change helps one set of muscles while asking more from the eyes. Sitting at the sorting table, you hear the wheels behind you and feel oddly detached from them, as though you have stepped from one current of the river into another. The same pencils pass before you, but the work's emphasis has changed. Sorting slows the breath. You pick up a pencil. You roll it. You look along its length. You set it in one of several places. Good, rough, bent, weekend, perhaps salvageable. The categories become familiar without needing to be spoken each time. Your hands move pencils through judgment as steadily as they moved blanks through the wheel. The table surface is smoother than the turning bench, worn by trays and forearms. Dust lies there too, but in calmer layers. The noise is lower. You can hear paper being creased, twine pulled, and someone counting under their breath. Counting has its own rhythm, and in a tired room it can sound almost like a whispered song. Numbers should be exact, even when the objects are cheap. A bundle short by one pencil is careless. A bundle overfilled may be generous, but it costs the shop if repeated too often. So the count matters, and fingers learn to gather groups quickly. 12, then another 12, then a larger packet, depending on the order. The mind keeps place while the room continues around it. If a pencil has a chipped end, you decide whether it can be reworked. A small chip might be smoothed away. A deep split means rejection. This decision contains both thrift and quality. Save what can be saved, but do not send trouble onward. Workers in modest trades know this balance well, because wasted material and poor goods both have consequences. The chipped pieces make a different sound when dropped into the reject box. Shorter, sharper, less orderly than finished pencils. The box may sit beneath the table or at one side, gradually filling with failures that are not quite useless, but no longer fit for the intended path. You hear each drop, and then release it from thought, because the next pencil is already in your hand. The Rouen slate pencil turner's day includes this repeated letting go of imperfect work. That can be tiring in a subtle way. You spend labor on pieces that do not survive inspection. Your body worked, and the count did not rise. But the alternative is worse. Sending a poor pencil forward only moves the failure into another person's hand. There is a kind of honesty in the reject box. It says the craft has standards. It says material has limits. It says human hands are not machines of perfection, even when guided by machines of motion. At the end of a day, the reject box is not only waste, it is also a record of judgment exercised and trouble contained. You may see a pencil from a younger worker's bench and recognize the pressure marks, slight flatness on one side, a ridge left near the end. The hands that made it were hurrying. You can almost reconstruct the motion by the fault, the way a reader can hear a voice in handwriting. Work leaves signatures even when no one signs it. Your own work has signatures too. Perhaps your pencils are slightly smoother near one end because of your grip. Perhaps your finish is especially even. Perhaps you waste less from brittle slate because you are cautious in the first touch. A foreman or experienced sorter might know your tray without a label, and that knowledge could be both compliment and scrutiny. As the afternoon matures, the warmth of the room grows heavier. Dust, bodies, lamps, and machinery make the air feel used. A window may be opened again if weather allows. The incoming air is cooler and carries street smells. Wet stone, manure, coal smoke, baking bread, river damp, and the faint sourness of crowded alleys. The workshop breathes out a little of its grey enclosure. You breathe with it. The chest expands more easily near the window's draught, though the draught may chill the neck. Comfort seldom comes without some other discomfort attached. You accept the cooler air for a while, then someone closer to the window may ask to close it partway. The room adjusts, as all shared rooms must. A slate pencil blank waits in your hand again. Its edges are rough enough to catch slightly on the skin. You place it to the wheel and rotate it steadily, feeling the corners soften. The dust rises in a narrow stream, then widens as it meets warmer air. You watch it for only a second, because the pencil needs your eyes more than the dust does. We can imagine the same motion repeated in many places, but Rouen gives it a particular atmosphere. The city's dampness, its old streets, its trade routes, its mixture of workshops and warehouses, all press faintly into the room. A slate pencil made here is not just a pencil from anywhere, it belongs to the labor of this place, to the river air and the grey light of Normandy. The worker may not speak of Normandy in such terms while working. More likely, you think of weather, wages, and whether the next batch will be better. But place enters the body quietly. Damp mornings stiffen joints. Local bells mark hours. Familiar streets guide tired feet home. The job is not floating in history. It is seated at a bench in Rouen, with all the city around it. A long afternoon can make memory porous. You may remember a childhood slate, if you used one. The clack of it against a desk. The cold frame in winter. The pale line of a pencil that squeaked when pressed too hard. Perhaps you did not know then that someone turned that pencil by hand. Now your own hands make the same object for children who will not know you. That circularity may give a quiet feeling, not grand, but enough. Tools pass between generations without ceremony. One child uses a slate pencil, grows up and perhaps makes pencils, sells pencils, teaches children who use pencils, or simply remembers the sound. Ordinary objects weave through lives this way, too plainly to be noticed, until someone sits beside them and listens. The afternoon's second half asks for steadiness, more than strength. You have already given much of the day's freshness away. Now you rely on method. Keep the tray close. Keep the wrist low. Turn before pressing harder. Check before placing. Brush dust before it thickens. Drink before the throat grows raw. These small rules hold the worker together. If a visitor entered now, the work might seem sleepy. Slow bodies, grey light, repetitive sounds, but inside each slow body is calculation. The turner judges pressure. The sorter judges quality. The packer judges count and tightness. The sweeper judges how to clear dust without lifting it. Every quiet movement is attached to some practiced decision. The slate pencil itself is a lesson in modest precision. It does not require decoration. It does not invite flourish. If it is straight, smooth, sturdy, and able to leave a clear line, it has succeeded. The worker's task is to serve that plain purpose. There is peace in such clarity, though the peace comes through labor. Now and then, your mind may drift to the market. Perhaps wages are due soon. Perhaps a pair of shoes must be repaired. Perhaps fuel is low at home. The wheel continues under your hand, and these thoughts move in the background, like traffic beyond a wall. The pencil keeps the foreground. It asks for enough of you that worry cannot take the whole room. The pencil breaks, and the foreground returns sharply but quietly. No drama. You set the pieces aside. You check whether the break came from a hidden flaw or from your pressure. If it was your pressure, you soften the next touch. This is the worker's form of apology, made not to the broken piece but to the work itself. The next rod survives. You let the success be ordinary. Too much emotion would waste energy in a day that has many pieces remaining. Workers learn emotional economy as well as material economy. Irritation is brief. Satisfaction is brief. Attention is renewed. The tray continues. A worker in the 1910s may have few protections by modern standards. Hours can be long. Ventilation may be poor. Pay may be narrow. Yet within that reality, people still create routines of care. They sharpen tools, share knowledge, save useful scraps, cover food, wrap sore fingers, and remind one another when a belt sounds wrong. We should notice these forms of care because they are practical and human. The ROUEN Slate pencil turner does not need us to pity every minute. The work contains boredom, strain, skill, companionship, and small pride. It contains a person making a living with hands and attention. It contains the ordinary courage of returning to a hard task because the task is yours and because life around you depends on such returns. Late afternoon brings a slight dimness before lamps are lit. This is a dangerous hour for the eye. Edges blur. Straightness becomes harder to judge. You may lean closer, then remember the dust and draw back. A lamp is brought, or a switch is made, and the bench brightens with a warmer, narrower light than the day gave. Under this light, every pencil casts a small shadow. Shadows help you see bends. You roll a rod and watch the shadow thicken and thin. A straight pencil keeps its shadow steady. A warped one makes the shadow pulse. The test is simple, almost beautiful, and it depends on nothing more than light, surface, and patient watching. The lamp also shows the dust on the air. It moves in currents made by sleeves, breath, and distant doors. You can see the room's hidden weather, all of it made by work. The particles drift slowly enough to seem peaceful, though you know their presence in the throat and eyes. Beauty and burden again share the same shape. You may wrap a scarf closer around your neck if the evening cools. The cloth smells of home beneath the workshop dust, perhaps soap, smoke, or the faint scent of stored linen. That small private smell can steady you. It reminds you that the bench is not the whole world. Even while the bench requires your full attention, the final major order of the day may need to be packed before closing. Finished pencils are brought together, counted, and aligned. You handle them differently now, not as single problems, but as a gathered result. The bundle must be straight, ends even, wrapper snug. A poorly aligned bundle makes good pencils look shabby, and a shabby bundle lowers trust before anyone writes a single line. Paper crackles softly as it folds around the rods. Twine is pulled, crossed, and tied. The knot should hold without crushing. You feel the tension through the string and adjust with practiced fingers. Too loose, and the pencils shift. Too tight, and the weaker ones complain with a tiny crack no one wants to hear. Labels may be pasted or tucked. The printed name, perhaps of the maker or merchant, gives the bundle an identity in the world beyond the workshop. The label looks clean for only a moment before dust threatens it. You press it down carefully, smoothing from the center outward. Even here, at the end, touch matters. The bundles gather in rows. This sight can quiet the mind. All afternoon's separate motions have become order. The slate that arrived rough and doubtful now lies in paper, counted and ready. You may not own the finished goods, and your name may not travel with them, but your labor is inside their neatness. That is enough to notice. A crate is lined or prepared. Bundles are placed in layers, perhaps with paper between them if needed. The crate smells of wood, dust, and travel. It will leave the shop more firmly than any single pencil could. You lower each bundle so the ends do not chip, because damage at the last moment has a special bitterness. The crate's lid may be set aside until inspection, or fastened if the order is complete. Hammering, if it happens, sounds louder than the rest of the work. Each tap travels through the boards and into the room. You hear it and feel the day drawing toward its practical close, though there are still benches to clean and tools to settle. Evening cleaning begins in patches. One worker finishes earlier and sweeps around a table. Another keeps turning until a final tray is done. The room becomes uneven, half work and half ending. This in-between state is familiar. It has the softness of fatigue and the mild impatience of people who can almost feel the outside air. You brush your bench slowly. Dust rolls into pale lines. Tiny chips appear beneath it, hidden until the bristles pass. You collect them, separate anything useful, and clear the surface enough for morning. Enough is the honest word. The bench will never look new. It should look ready, and readiness is different from purity. The wheel is wiped where it can be wiped safely. Bearings are checked. A belt may be loosened or left, according to practice. Tools return to their places. The gauge is set where the morning hand will reach without searching. You perform these acts for tomorrow's self as much as for the shop. A well-left bench is a kindness sent forward one night. The water in the washing basin darkens again. Hands enter, and grey clouds bloom around them. You rub each finger with the tired thoroughness of someone who knows the dust will return tomorrow. The water cools quickly. The towel is already marked. Still, the act of washing draws a line between work and evening, even if the line is imperfect. When you put on your coat, the body feels both lighter and more aware of its aches. The thumb throbs faintly, the back unfolds by degrees. The eyes are grateful for distance after so many hours of close work. Outside, the street offers shapes larger than pencils. Doors, carts, roofs, people, lamps, and the slow breath of the sky. Rouen at evening can feel damp even when rain has not fallen. The stones hold moisture, smoke drifts low. Light gathers in shop windows and along the edges of puddles. You walk through it with others from the workshop, perhaps speaking, perhaps not. The silence between tired workers is not unfriendly, it is simply economical. A bakery window glows warmly, a horse's harness rings faintly. Somewhere, a child laughs and then is called indoors. You may pass a stationer's shop, if your route allows, and perhaps there, among copybooks and ink bottles, lie bundles of pencils, like the ones you made. They look cleaner behind glass, almost detached from dust and sore hands. Seeing them there may create a strange feeling. The object has changed status. On the bench, it was work. In the shop, it is merchandise. In the classroom, it will be a tool. In the child's hand, perhaps hardly noticed. Each place gives it a different meaning, and none of those meanings is false. The pencil is small enough to belong to all of them. At home, evening tasks continue. Work does not end all labor, especially in a household where fuel, food, washing, and mending must be managed. Yet the movements are different. A spoon instead of a slate rod, a basin instead of a wheel, cloth instead of stone. The body may prefer these changes, even when it is tired, because variety itself can feel like rest. If you have children nearby, they may ask about the dust or ignore it completely, because it has always been there. A child might use a slate pencil without connecting it to your work, the way children use bread without imagining the baker's dawn. That innocence is ordinary. The world is built from labors children only slowly learn to see. Perhaps one day, a child asks how the pencils are made. You might describe the slate, the cutting, the turning, the sorting. You might take a scrap and show how it marks a board. The explanation would be simple, but the child's eyes might widen at the thought that a plain pencil has a story. Many ordinary objects become larger when their making is revealed. For now the evening continues quietly. Supper, washing, repairing a sleeve, looking at the weather, listening to neighbors through thin walls. The workshop's rhythm fades, but not completely. When you close your hand, the fingers still know the pencil's diameter. When you hear a cartwheel scrape stone, it may remind you faintly of slate against the wheel. Sleep comes after such days in layers. First the body lies down. Then the mind continues a little while, reviewing small troubles or tomorrow's needs. Then sounds from the street drift farther away. The hand relaxes. The thumb uncurls. The imaginary pencil falls from the fingers without making a sound. The wheel slows somewhere inside memory. And then another morning is waiting, not as a dramatic beginning, but as a return. The Rouen slate pencil turner steps again into the pale room. The bench receives the body. The tray offers its rough, narrow pieces. The wheel begins to move, and the day takes up its old thread, pulling it gently through hours of dust, touch, and care. Some mornings bring fog from the river, and the workshop seems to emerge from whiteness, rather than from night. Coats are damp at the shoulders, hair curls slightly at the temples. The slate feels colder than usual, and the first rods chill the fingertips. You rub your hands together before beginning, but the warmth does not last long against stone. The fog changes sound. Carts outside become muffled. Bells arrive without clear direction. Footsteps on the street seem closer and softer at the same time. Inside, the wheel sounds more present because the outside world is wrapped. The workshop becomes a small island of motion, grey within grey, with the turning of pencils as its tide. In such weather, drying and packing may require extra care. Paper dislikes damp. Labels curl if paste is wrong or air too wet. Finished pencils must be kept from moisture that could make dust cling or packaging spoil. The worker notices not as a scientist in a laboratory, but as someone whose hands have seen what damp does to materials over many mornings. The slate itself is not harmed by ordinary damp in the same way paper is. But wet dust becomes troublesome. It smears. It marks wrappers. It gathers beneath fingernails in darker lines. The bench feels gritty and slightly clammy. You wipe more often, adjust cloths, and keep the finished pencils away from the worst of the moisture. Foggy days may feel slower. Light is poor. The body is cooler. The world beyond the window offers no sharp view to rest the eyes. Yet the order still waits. You settle into the routine and allow the work to give the day shape. Without that shape, the fog might make everything feel suspended. With it, time moves through the hands. A clear day brings another mood. Light enters earlier. Edges sharpen. Dust becomes visible in brilliant detail, which is both helpful and unsettling. You can see every particle rise from the wheel and float across the bench. The pencils are easier to judge, but the air looks fuller. You breathe carefully and continue, because clear sight does not always bring comfort. Weather, material, machinery, and mood make each day slightly different inside sameness. This is something outsiders often miss. They see repetition and imagine identical hours. The worker knows better. The same task under damp light, bright light, poor slate, good slate, a sore thumb, a repaired wheel, or a large order becomes a different experience each time. The Rouen slate pencil turner understands variation without needing to celebrate it. Variation is simply the condition under which routine must operate. You do not wait for ideal circumstances. You adjust to the day given. If the wheel bites, you soften pressure. If the light dims, you move closer to the window. If the slate splits, you choose more carefully. There is wisdom in this ordinary adjustment, not heroic adaptation, only repeated practical response. The job becomes possible because the worker does not insist that every day resemble the best day. You work with what arrives, and the work teaches you which complaints matter and which must be folded quietly into the rhythm. A particularly brittle batch may require shorter pencils. The rods break if kept long, but smaller lengths can still be useful. Perhaps these become cheaper goods or are packed differently. The decision may not be yours, but your hands discover the possibility. You learn that saving value often means accepting a changed purpose rather than forcing the original one. This too belongs to craft. The material speaks, and the worker listens. A piece too flawed for one use may serve another. A short pencil may still write. A rough rod may become practice stock for a learner. A broken piece may test a wheel's surface. Waste is reduced by imagination, though not every piece can be saved. At times, you may help prepare shipping crates for finished orders. This work changes the scale of the body. Instead of pinching narrow rods, you lift bundles, fold paper, carry boxes, and bend at the knees. The larger movements feel almost welcome after hours of stillness, though they bring their own strain. The smell of wood and packing paper replaces, for a while, the sharper presence of the wheel. Crates must be marked legibly. A smudged mark can confuse delivery. A weak lid can spill goods. A poorly packed crate can turn neat bundles into chipped disorder before it reaches the merchant. The slate pencil may be small, but transporting many small things safely is a craft of its own. You learn to respect packing as much as turning. The crate leaves with a sound different from the workshop's usual music. It scrapes, lifts, settles onto a cart, and becomes part of the city's movement. Hooves, wheels, voices, and street stones take over from wheel, tray, and bench. You may watch for only a moment before returning inside. The order has departed, but another tray waits, and waiting work has a way of filling the space immediately. The day's middle hours can be the most difficult for morale. Morning's beginning is gone. Evening is too far away. The body is neither fresh nor finished. This is when the smallest comforts matter most. A better piece of slate, a beam of light in the right place, a cup of water, a shared remark, the smooth turning of 3 or 4 pencils in a row. You learn to collect such comforts quietly, not to depend on them exactly, but to notice them when they arrive. The work may be hard, yet it is not without texture. A good sound, a warm patch of sun, a clean bundle, the smell of bread from outside. These small things enter the day like threads of color through gray cloth. A worker's relationship to tools can become almost affectionate, though affection is rarely spoken. The stool may be uncomfortable, but it is your stool. The gauge may be plain, but your hand finds it in the same place. The tray's chipped corner tells you which side to turn toward yourself. Such familiarity turns a workshop from a mere room into a known environment. Known environments reduce fear, but they do not remove fatigue. By the end of many weeks, the body accumulates more than one day's ache. Sunday or a rest day, if it comes, must carry washing, errands, family, and perhaps church, not only idleness. The worker returns after rest with some stiffness gone, and some deeper tiredness still waiting beneath it. The 1910s ROUEN slate pencil turner is part of a working life where leisure is limited and practical. Rest may mean sitting by a window, walking slowly, mending clothes, sharing a meal, or simply not hearing the wheel for a while. Silence after machinery has its own richness. The ear opens to smaller sounds, a kettle, a page turning, rain against glass. When work resumes, the contrast makes the wheel more noticeable at first. Then, gradually, it becomes background again. This is how people adapt to sound. What would seem loud to a visitor becomes the room's normal weather. Only changes stand out. A slip, a grind, a new rattle. The experienced ear listens for difference within continuity. Difference within continuity is also how you inspect pencils. One roughness among smooth rods. One bent line among straight ones. One dull sound among clean taps. Skill is not always seeing everything with equal intensity. It is knowing where attention should sharpen and where the ordinary can be trusted to remain ordinary. You take up another pencil, and your thumb finds a ridge near the middle. It is slight, but it will be felt by whoever uses it. You return it to the wheel and remove just enough. The ridge disappears. The pencil is thinner now, but still sound. You roll it, approve it, and add it to the tray. A small problem has passed through your hands and ceased to be a problem. This quiet removal of roughness is the heart of the work. Again and again, the turner takes irregularity and lessens it. The task has no final triumph, only repeated adequacy. Yet there is something deeply human in that. Much of life is not made perfect. It is made smoother, straighter, more usable by patient attention given one small place at a time. The day moves toward another late afternoon, and the shop's air thickens again with use. The sound of sweeping begins earlier in one corner, perhaps because a batch is complete. You hear bristles against boards, then the pause while dust settles. Someone opens the door briefly, and cool air crosses the floor like water. You feel it around your ankles and keep turning. A worker leaving early for an errand may wash at the basin while others continue. The sound of water is clean and almost startling. It reminds everyone that the day has an outside edge. even if their own ending has not arrived yet. You look once toward the basin, then back to the pencil, because looking too long at another person's departure can make the remaining minutes heavier. The final hour arrives gradually. No bell can make tired hands instantly light. You begin to choose tasks that can be completed properly before closing. A tray half done may wait if the shop allows it, but a pencil under the wheel must be finished. Bundles must not be left loose. Paste must be covered. Tools must be placed where dust and damp will do least harm overnight. The ROUEN Slate pencil turner's day ends by restoring order to what production disturbed. Dust gathered, tools shifted, materials moved, rejects collected, good pencils counted, wrappers opened, and bodies occupied every corner. Evening asks the room to become readable again, not clean like a parlor, but organized like a place that can begin tomorrow without confusion. You brush the bench and see its wood appear from beneath the gray. The color returns in streaks, warm brown under pale powder. For a moment the contrast is satisfying. Then more dust from your sleeve falls where you have just cleaned, and you accept the imperfection. Some places can only be made better, not spotless. The wheel slows and stops. The line shaft quiets if the whole room is shutting down. Silence opens carefully, as though it had been waiting behind the machinery all day. You hear the city more clearly now. A cart, a voice, perhaps rain beginning again. The workshop becomes a room instead of a machine, and the workers become people preparing to leave. You stand and feel the day rearrange itself in your joints. The hands that were so precise at the bench are clumsy for a moment with coat buttons. The eyes, used to short distances, lift toward faces, doors, windows, and the wider street beyond. The body transitions from worker at the bench to person in the evening, slowly and without ceremony. At the basin, grey water swirls again. You may see tiny sparkles of mineral in it when the light catches just right. The dust that troubled the air now settles into water, harmless for the moment. You rub your palms together and feel the skin's tender places. A small cut stings. You rinse it, wrap it if needed, and let the water carry away what it can. The towel never stays clean. It is part of the shop's honesty. No matter how often it is rinsed or replaced, it receives the day's residue. Hands dry on it, leaving pale marks. The towel hangs limp, grayed by everyone's labor, and no one expects it to be anything else. Some objects in a workplace exist to take on what the workers cannot carry home. You step out again into Rouen, where evening holds more color than the workshop allowed. Brown doors, yellow lamps, dark green shutters, red shop signs, black wheels shining with damp. After hours of gray, the city seems gently rich. You notice without needing to name each color. The eyes rest by traveling farther than the length of a pencil. The river's presence may reach you through smell before sight. Wet rope, mud, coal smoke, and the cool breath of open water. Rouen's trade depends on movement, and the river carries a larger version of the same principle as the workshop. Materials arriving, goods leaving, people placed within systems that are too large to see from any single bench. You cross or follow streets that workers from many trades know. Textile workers, dock laborers, clerks, bakers, printers, laundresses, carters, machinists, and shop assistants all move through the evening. Each carries a different residue of labor: ink under nails, flour on sleeves, coal dust at collars, soap-reddened hands, slate gray in the creases of your fingers. There is companionship in passing them, even without conversation. The city is full of people who have spent the day making, moving, cleaning, counting, and repairing things others will use. History often records the owners, inventors, and officials, but the streets at evening carry the quieter truth. Work is distributed across thousands of bodies, each one tired in its own pattern. At home, the body asks for warmth, a stove if there is fuel, a bowl of soup, a blanket around the shoulders. The thumb may be rubbed without thinking. The back may find the chair's support. You let the day loosen from you as much as it can, though tomorrow's shape remains nearby, waiting in memory. If there is a slate in the house, perhaps used by a child, it may sit near the table with a pencil beside it. The sight is almost too ordinary. Your day's labor has followed you home in miniature. The child writes a word, rubs it out, writes again. The pencil leaves its pale trace, and your hand knows exactly how that narrow rod came to be. You might correct the child's grip gently, not as a teacher correcting letters, but as a maker concerned for the tool. Too much pressure breaks the point. A lighter touch writes better. The child may listen or may not. Either way, the pencil wears down, doing what it was made to do, and the sound against the slate is familiar enough to belong both to work and home. This mingling can be restful or wearying. Some workers prefer not to see the products of their labor after leaving the shop. Others feel a small pride when an object proves useful. Both feelings can exist together. You can be tired of slate and still pleased that the pencil writes smoothly. Human feelings about work are seldom tidy. Night moves over Rouen. The workshop is closed, but the dust remains settled on benches, waiting for morning. The wheels are still. The trays are stacked. The good pencils are wrapped, boxed, or covered. The rejects sit in their own container, mute and honest. Tools lie where hands will find them, and the room holds the faint warmth of work even as it cools. In sleep, the worker may not dream of pencils at all. Dreams may go to childhood, weather, food, faces, streets, or nothing remembered. Yet the body continues its quiet repair. Skin closes around small cuts, muscles soften, eyes rest from gray attention, breath deepens away from dust. The whole self, used as an instrument during the day, is returned slowly to itself. The next morning, if rain has come, the walk to the workshop is darker and shinier. Water gathers between stones. Cartwheels hiss through shallow puddles. The coat collar rises against the neck. Inside, the room smells of damp wood before the machines warm it. You hang the coat, touch the bench, and begin again. The first tray may hold blanks from a new delivery. You examine them with mild hope. The slate looks decent. The edges are cleaner than yesterday's. You take one, feel its weight, and bring it to the wheel. It turns well. The sound is even. A better day may be possible, though the worker knows better than to decide too soon. Good material changes the room. Breaks are fewer. Hands move with more confidence. The reject box fills slowly. The foreman's face relaxes slightly. Workers speak with less irritation. It is remarkable how much mood can depend on the quality of stone cut, long before it reached the bench. The past of the material enters the present of the room. A clean turning batch lets you feel skill more clearly. The wheel responds to small adjustments. The rod becomes round without argument. The finish comes smooth, and the tray gathers good pencils at a satisfying pace. You still work hard, but the effort feels properly spent, not wasted in resistance. This is one of the kinder forms a workday can take. We can stay with that kindness without pretending it removes everything else. Dust still rises. The posture still strains. The count still matters. The wages remain modest, but good slate gives the worker a fair conversation, and that can change the spirit of hours. A trade feels less punishing when the material allows skill to show. The young worker nearby notices the difference too. Fewer rods break in his hands. His confidence grows, and with confidence his movements improve. Poor material can teach caution, but good material can teach rhythm. Both lessons matter. Today, perhaps, the room receives rhythm, and the whole shop seems to breathe more evenly. You turn, test, and place. The tray fills. The light improves. Somewhere outside, the rain stops, and the window brightens. Drops remain on the glass, each one holding a small distorted piece of the street. You glance up and see movement beyond them, then return to the slate. The world outside has changed weather while the wheel continued. A stationer might later praise this batch without knowing why. The pencils are straight. The line they leave is even. They feel good in the hand. Praise may travel back only as repeat orders. If it travels at all, the worker learns to accept indirect appreciation. A steady order is a kind of compliment. No complaint is another. Yet direct pride may still appear in small ways. You adjust the wheel because the surface should be better, not only because neatness feels right. You reject a doubtful piece because your own standard requires it. You adjust the wheel because the surface should be better, Not only because someone will check, craft survives in these private loyalties even where pay and pressure shape the day. Mid-morning, someone brings news from outside. Perhaps a street is blocked, a delivery delayed, a neighbor ill, a shop changing hands. The news travels in fragments between benches, never fully stopping work. You hear enough to understand, not enough to be carried away. The pencil in hand remains the immediate duty, and the news becomes part of the room's low murmur. This is how social life often fits inside labor. Conversation arrives in pieces, tied to motion, a question during selection, an answer during rolling, a laugh while lifting a tray, a silence when the wheel demands closer attention. The work structures speech, and speech softens work. Neither fully yields to the other. The Rouen slate pencil turner is not alone with stone all day, though the object is solitary in the hand. People surround the labor with glances, habits, jokes, corrections, and shared weather. The worker knows who arrives early, who keeps tools tidy, who complains about damp, who sings under the breath, and who can fix a slipping belt with calm efficiency. Such knowledge makes the shop human. Without it, the place would be only machinery and dust. With it, the room becomes a community of necessity, imperfect but real. People may irritate one another, help one another, judge one another, and depend on one another, all while pencils continue to pass from rough blank to finished bundle. A good wheelman or mechanic, if the shop has one, is valued quietly. When the turning stones run true, everyone benefits. When belts slip or bearings heat, everyone suffers. Maintenance may seem separate from pencil turning, but it is bound to it. The hand can only be as steady as the machine allows. You may watch a repair with interest during a pause, a cover removed, a belt examined, oil applied, a worn part tightened or replaced. The smell of oil becomes stronger, dark and warm against the dry mineral air. The wheel turns by hand first, then under power, and the sound settles back into correctness. Work resumes with a collective ease. Correctness has a sound. The worker knows it before naming it. A true wheel hums evenly. A troubled one knocks, scrapes, or pulls. The slate pencil itself, meeting a correct wheel, behaves more predictably. The whole chain of quality begins before the blank touches the stone, in the condition of tools cared for by other hands. This interdependence matters. The turner's skill is essential, but it does not stand alone. Quarrymen, cutters, transport workers, mechanics, packers, merchants, and teachers all belong somewhere in the pencil's life. The job is narrow at the bench, yet wide in its connections. We feel that width whenever a cart leaves or a new crate of slate arrives. A new crate arrives with effort. It is set down, opened, and inspected. The smell of raw slate is cooler and stronger inside, less mixed with the workshop. The pieces are stacked with a certain rough order. You may lift a few and judge them, already imagining how they will behave. Material entering the room always carries possibility and uncertainty together. The crate's straw or packing material may scatter on the floor. Wood creaks, nails are pried, someone remarks on the look of the batch. These moments break the day's narrow repetition without disturbing its calm. They remind everyone that work begins before the bench and continues after it, and that the tray of blanks is only one stage in a longer passage. You return with a selection from the new batch. The first rod feels good, the second less so. The third has a seam. You sort quickly because experience has made your fingers skeptical in useful ways. Trust the material but verify it. That principle lives at the bench long before anyone phrases it elegantly. The afternoon will come again, and with it the familiar heaviness. For now the morning's improved slate carries the room forward. Finished pencils gather in orderly lines. The young worker breaks fewer rods. The foreman checks a tray and says little, which may be the best sign. In many workshops approval is quiet, and silence can mean the work is acceptable. You do not need much praise to continue. You need enough light, decent material, a functioning wheel, and a body able to sit and attend. When those things align, the work becomes almost peaceful despite its strain. The mind can settle into the motion. The hand can guide rather than fight. The tray can fill at a pace that feels possible. At noon, The meal tastes better because the morning has gone well. Bread breaks cleanly. Water feels cool. The room's talk is a little easier. Someone may mention that the batch is good, and several workers agree in their own ways. A nod, a short answer, a glance toward the trays. Shared relief does not need many words. After the meal, you return again, and the day begins its second half with less resistance than before. The wheel is ready, the slate is waiting, the bench holds the pale evidence of morning's work, and your hands lower themselves into the old position, knowing what to do before the mind has fully gathered.